Chapter 899. Sunday, August 27th. It was the 14th day of the summer break. The exorcism convention would officially start on August 28th, which was tomorrow. After Audiobook's team had been formed last night, everyone had agreed to register for the pre-competition team registration. Songhai Modern Exorcism Center was a building that looked like an ostrich's egg, and the location had been chosen very carefully. It was said that 1,000 years ago, a great ghost who had wreaked havoc in the human world had been annihilated at this exorcism center. That great ghost was prone to taking human form, and its most common disguise was as a pipe repairman. It had a special hobby of eating mushrooms, and its crime tool was a wrench. At that moment, Wang Ling and the others appeared at the entrance of the exorcism center. Wang Ling raised his eyes lazily and saw a wrench stained with green blood in a glass cabinet in the center of the exorcism center's reception hall. This was the tool that the great ghost had used back then. But for some reason, Wang Ling felt that it was familiar. Because of his work, Audiobook had actually been to the exorcism center before. When he had still been the deputy director, several small leaders who worked at the exorcism center had called him over to ask for help with their children's schooling. But rather than saying, ask, it was more like blackmail, and their tone had been very unpleasant. They had even taken gifts and insisted that Audiobook accept them. Audiobook was a man of integrity, and absolutely wouldn't accept this kind of shady deal, so he had refused the parents' request on the spot. Back then, he still remembered how flustered and exasperated these small leaders had looked when he had left the exorcism center, and had even said that they would entrust friends from other departments to impeach him and remove him from his position. Who would have thought that the tables would now turn, and he would be promoted to director, and also Huaxiao Alliance's representative at the United Nations General Assembly. These small cadres from back then were no longer a threat to him at all. But it had already been a long time since that incident, and Audiobook guessed that these people had probably already been transferred out of the city, worried that he would retaliate. They waited at the entrance for a while, and a moment later, the two teams led by grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Fong Xing arrived. But there was a tacit understanding that they didn't talk to each other, and after confirming that they had arrived, they walked into the exorcism center together. Their mission was to take the top 3 spots. It would not be good if others found out that their teams were related to each other. Thus, before this trip, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had prepared masks for everyone, including Wang Ling and Audiobook, to hide their appearances. Fatty Luo had worked through the night to make this mask. He had even added an anti-see-through layer to prevent outsiders from perceiving them with their ocular powers. The only thing that couldn't be hidden was Loopy Toad. Although Loopy Toad was also wearing a mask, it was no use, that eye-catching green fur was too eye-catching. Coupled with that wagging dog tail that couldn't be hidden, Wang Ling felt that dog too didn't even need to wear a mask, but then again, Loopy Toad had been cultivating very hard recently. He should be able to transform into a human in a short period of time. Who knew what Loopy Toad would look like when it took on a human form? In fact, it was normal to wear a mask in every exorcism competition. This was because the vast majority of people competed in small groups led by professional exorcists. Many of the cultivators in the teams were hired by the exorcists as temporary workers. Naturally, there was a need to protect one's identity. Another reason was that the exorcism competition's prize money was huge, and it was reassuring to do a good job of protecting one's identity. This mentality was like wearing a mask to receive the prize after winning the lottery. In front of the registration counter, Boss Jin's thick arm was stretched across the counter, and his voice was loud and magnetic. "I'm here to sign up. Our team, 4 people." Boss Jin wasn't wearing a mask. He was an exorcist of the older generation, and was well known in the circle. "Boss Jin, you're here to sign up again." The lady at the front desk in charge of registration was also a veteran employee of the exorcism center. She smiled when she saw the information Boss Jin had submitted. This document contained the personal information of the 4 of them. Of course, the entire registration process was confidential. As the lady at the front desk checked the information, her slender fingers flew over the keyboard. But when she entered the fourth person's information, she was stunned. Because this was Wang Ling's information, underage. The lady at the front desk raised her head and stared at Boss Jean. For a moment, countless people around them looked at her strangely. Boss Jean, according to the Exorcism Center's regulations, underage people can't participate. Unless they have permission from their parents or the relevant authorities. I know. Boss Jean looked at the lady at the front desk and wiped at his sweat. Please check the information carefully again. The lady at the front desk rummaged carefully, and in the end found that there really was information. Furthermore, it was signed by the General Administration of 100 schools. It even had the official seal of the General Administration of 100 schools. Ah. Sorry. I didn't see it just now. The lady at the front desk hurriedly got up and apologized. A few minutes later, everyone's information had been entered. The lady at the front desk handed the information back to Boss Jean with both hands. I wish you all a successful exorcism. Later, you will receive the latest exorcism ranking list on your cell phones, and you can discuss which demons and ghosts you want to eliminate. The Exorcism Center will send all the arrangements to your cell phones in the form of text messages. The official start time of the competition is tomorrow at midnight. Boss Jean, please lead your team and get ready. Thank you. Boss Jean nodded. Just as he was about to collect the information, an exorcist led his team over from a distance. This was a middle-aged man who was about the same age as Boss Jean. He had a very large mole on the tip of his chin, and a few black hairs were particularly conspicuous on it. This man also wasn't wearing a mask. One look and you could tell that he was a veteran exorcist. Long time no see. How are you, Boss Jean? You lost the exorcism conventions one after another last year, and I thought you didn't have the face to come this year. As soon as this person spoke, a lot of people instantly turned to look at him. It's Mr. Fong. Mr. Fong. The runner-up in the last exorcism competition. It was obvious that this Mr. Fong was very famous here. A lot of people started to talk. Listening casually, Wang Ling realized that Boss Jean and this Mr. Fong also had a grudge. Last year, Boss Jean had been ruthlessly used by this Mr. Fong. He had found a ghost, and just as he was about to get rid of it, it had been suddenly stolen. After all, Wang Ling hadn't been involved, and didn't know what had happened last year. He didn't want to care. In any case, it was fine as long as he helped Boss Jean win the competition this year. Boss Jean couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this Mr. Fong, and just pretended that he hadn't seen anything as he directly walked out. But just as he took a step forward, he was stopped by Mr. Fong again. Mr. Fong chuckled with a provocative expression on his face. I heard earlier that there's a minor in Boss Jean's team this year. I didn't expect our Boss Jean to have fallen to the point where he has to hire child labor. As soon as he said that, before Boss Jean could reply, several powerful spiritual pressures were already pressing down on Mr. Fong from the history room. There were spiritual pressures from Grenade Throwing, Fong Xing, Little Silver, Loopy Toad, Odd Joie, Immortal Toya, Cailian Jinren. This was a set of spiritual pressures from every member of the Office of Strategic Deception. Furthermore, after hearing Mr. Fong's provocation, everyone in the Office of Strategic Deception had the same attitude. They could be summed up in 7 words: those who insulted the group's favorites would be killed without mercy. Chapter 900. It wasn't just Mr. Fong, even Wang Ling himself hadn't expected everyone's reaction to be so surprisingly uniform. At first, everyone had just wanted to put on a show of strength and intimidate Mr. Fong with a little spiritual pressure, but who would have thought that everyone's spiritual pressure would instantly stack on top of each other, directly causing Mr. Fong to foam at the mouth and faint on the spot. What an unlucky kid. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. But then he realized that his focus wasn't right. He felt that he should pay more attention to when he had become the group favorite: spiritual pressure shock injury, On the other side, the emergency medical staff who had rushed over from the exorcism center wiped at their sweat. Spiritual pressure shock injury was the most difficult type of injury to identify, so this Mr. Fong who had been shaken down could only count himself unlucky. The competition hadn't even officially started, and a strong contender for the championship had already been knocked out on the spot. Boss Jean was an impatient person, and was the kind of person who would use fists and feet to solve problems if he couldn't explain things clearly. This could be seen from the way Boss Jean had swung his fists at Odd Joie as soon as he had entered. He actually wasn't a bad person by nature. Boss Jean had offended a lot of people over the years because of his bad temper, and Mr. Fong was one of them. This had directly sowed the seeds of disaster for Boss Jin's loss in the competition last year. Mr. Fong was very vengeful. He had wanted to repeat his old trick this year and watch Boss Jean steal his kill, but he never expected to be sent straight to the hospital because of his cheap mouth. It would take at least half a month for him to recover. But after Mr. Fong's actions, the other people in the exorcism center who had thoughts about Boss Jean also curbed their thoughts. This year, Boss Jean was full of fury. The members of this small team looked much more reliable than those three who only knew how to watch the show last year. After registering at the exorcism center, Boss Jean gathered everyone for a meeting in the shop in the afternoon. The attractive group had sent Fong Xing as their representative, while the Human Beast group had sent Dog 2. Note: Human Beast group, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Dog 2, Dharmaraja, Fatty Luo. Attractive group, Fong Xing, Little Silver, Cailianjanren, Immortal Toya. Boss Jean didn't know Fong Xing or Loopy Toad, so when they appeared at the door, he couldn't help sighing in his heart. Since they could come to the meeting as representatives, they should represent the combat power of the other two groups, but no matter how he looked at it, store manager Jean just didn't seem reliable. Fong Xing was too young, sunny, handsome, and simple-minded. It wouldn't be easy for him to deal with those cunning demon ghosts. As for the green-furred dog on the other side, even if it was a spirit beast, it hadn't even transformed into a human, so how strong could it be? Could it be that he was using it as a prop to show off? Boss Jean muttered to himself before taking his seat. Thank you for attending today's meeting. The main purpose of today's meeting is to distribute combat tasks. When Boss Jean spoke, everyone, including Wang Ling, was playing with their phones. Boss Jean was already used to this situation. After all, this was basically the case in all gatherings of friends these days. Friends were sitting together, but all of them were looking at their phones. Mobile phones, which carried a sense of guilt, had already added a barrier to communication between people. Many people didn't even know how to chat without their phones. At that moment, in the office of Strategic Deception's Core Management Group, everyone was chatting animatedly. ID, dog who longs to be stroked by Little Master, Dog 2, it's a good thing everyone isn't here. This meeting is so boring. I'm so sleepy. ID, I love broccoli, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, sorry to trouble you, Brother Dog, to attend. After all, Boss Jean is the commander of this operation. For the sake of Lord Jinka's scabbard, let's be patient. Also, we have to give Boss Jean face and not dampen his enthusiasm as a commander. How's the meeting going now? ID, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch's fanboy, Fong Xing, Boss Jean is now talking about the exorcism ranking list. This year's strongest devil, codenamed Pen Spirit, will be directly rewarded with 1 million points after killing it. Pen Spirit often appears in the Funan region, and its exact location has yet to be decided. Boss Jean says it's very ferocious and difficult to hunt down. It can hide its spirit body in any pencil, and is extremely secretive. It can kill with a pen without a sound. Devil number 2, Man-Eating Pigeon. Reward, 800,000 points. Rumor has it that this big guy was on a date with his girlfriend back then, but she stood him up. He was so angry that he died, and his resentment accumulated to become a devil. This year, more than 100 couples have already died at the claws of man-eating pigeons. Devil number 3, Lemon Essence. Reward, 500,000 points. According to Boss Jean, lemon essence has a powerful corrosive ability, and can even easily disintegrate the bodies of soul formation cultivators. It's really amazing. I love Master, Little Silver, so these 3 devils are stronger than the prison mahjong trio. Shifu is mine, Odd Shua, of course not. Most of the devils selected for the exorcism competition in previous years are very difficult to find, as they're too secretive. But to tell the truth, these 3 devils might not even be strong enough for Shifu to slap them in the face. Don't you think so, Shifu? Wang Ling didn't look at what this group of people was saying at all. He just stared at their IDs and was lost in thought. Any devil had its own fixed targets and habits when it committed crimes. For example, the people it had killed the most this year were high school students at the foundation establishment stage. Actually, it wasn't very strong overall, but it excelled at being secretive. The reason why it was at the top of the list this time was purely because the parents of the high school students who had been killed by it had joined forces to report it, pushing this notorious devil to the forefront. Fong Xing had already said in the group that man-eating pigeons' fixed targets were couples. But to be more specific, they were couples who openly showed off their affection in public. Finally, the lemon essence's fixed targets were successful people in society, and they would especially pick on soft persimmons to bully. For Wang Ling, these 3 devils were boring challenges. If it wasn't for Jinka, he wouldn't even bother to make a move on them. In Shop 83, Boss Jean looked at the time and said, "It's almost midnight. I've already booked tickets to Funan, so we can set off now. It's half an hour from here to the airport. The plane leaves at 2 in the morning. That brush spirit is very hard to find. I heard that a team has already arrived in Funan. We have to hurry." Next to Boss Jean, his shop assistant Ling Huan was already ready. He had all kinds of exorcism magic artifacts on him. However, the group in front of him didn't move at all, and continued to stare at their phones. "What are you doing? Listen to orders." Boss Jean was anxious. Still, no one said anything. Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the time on his phone. There were 5 more seconds until midnight. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The moment the clock hit midnight, Boss Jean received a text announcement from the exorcism center on his phone. The devil at the top of the exorcism list, Brush Spirit, has been killed. Killing team, Team Jean Ku. 1 million points awarded. Boss Jean stared at the text message with a stupefied expression. Chapter 901. Roughly 10 minutes ago, Boss Jin's meeting had just ended, and it was 10 minutes until midnight. Wang Ling had a rough idea of the locations of these 3 devils, and had Book of Sage Immortal search for them as quickly as possible. Since enlightening Book of Sage Immortal, Wang Ling had realized that it was indeed a great help when it came to searching for information. But this thing could be spared the death penalty, but it couldn't escape punishment. Wang Ling still remembered how he had sold his own limited number of crispy noodle snacks to help Immortal Toya buy tickets. So after he found Jinka's scabbard, Wang Ling still had to give this tablet away. If he kept it by his side, it would be a disaster sooner or later. A few seconds later, Book of Sage Immortal transmitted Pen Spirit's location. As Boss Jean had said, Pen Spirit was in the area around Funan, and it was currently committing murder. In the conference room, Wang Ling used the Great Soul Shift spell of the 3,000 great spells to quickly arrive at Pen Spirit's location. This was a boy's room. Wang Ling used the Great Soul Shift spell to appear behind this boy, but the crew-cut little brother was completely unaware. Because Wang Ling was currently in his spirit body state. Even people from the domain of the gods like Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi wouldn't be able to see Wang Ling's spirit body state, let alone a high school student. The Great Soul Shift spell could be regarded as an advanced out-of-body spell that could teleport a soul to any location in the world. But his spirit body couldn't stay out of the body for too long, and would automatically return to the body after 15 minutes. But this was enough time for Wang Ling to get rid of Pen's spirit. This wasn't a difficult enemy to deal with to begin with, it was just that it was hard to find. At the desk, the crew-cut little brother was completely unaware that he had already been targeted by the female ghost. Pen in hand, he stared at the book and seemed to be racking his brains for a topic. Nan Nan. Nan Nan. The voice of the little brother's mother came from outside the door. She knocked first, then turned the doorknob and placed a plate of fruit next to the little brother. Seeing that her son was studying seriously, the mother smiled kindly. Study well. Nan Nan. Tell me what you want to eat. I know, the little brother replied coldly. The little brother replied coldly. Although he was looking at the book, he was sizing up his mother from the corner of his eyes. After his mother left, the flat-top little brother heaved a sigh of relief. Flipping through the book in his hand, Wang Ling realized there was actually a trap in this platform little brother's thick revision materials. That's right. A rectangular pit. The young man had placed his phone in the pit. As long as someone came by, he would close the front page of the book, and when there was no one around, he would flip it back. Wang Ling broke out in a sweat. This little brother was really going through a lot of trouble to play with his phone. He glanced at the name written on the young man's revision materials, Lin Nan. He was currently in his 3rd year of high school. The college entrance examination for foundation establishment high schools was held in October after the summer vacation, which was somewhat different from ordinary high schools. Therefore, as long as it was the summer vacation of the 3rd year of high school, the vast majority of children in foundation establishment high schools wouldn't have a very comfortable time. Putting aside the practical subjects, there was still too much theoretical knowledge waiting for them to review, and their parents usually kept a close eye on them. It was very obvious that this flat-top little brother was afraid of being nagged by his mother, which was why he had played a trick and hidden his phone in his revision materials. He wasn't taking his studies seriously at all. Wang Ling stared at Lin Nan and sighed in his heart. Play when it was time to play, and review when it was time to review. Only by striking a proper balance between work and rest could one learn more efficiently. But even so, Wang Ling wasn't Lin Nan, and it wasn't appropriate for him to comment too much. After all, everyone's situation was different, and if you weren't someone else, you shouldn't easily judge someone else. Wang Ling was very curious as to why Lin Nan had gone through so much trouble to hide his phone. Shifting his gaze, he saw that Lin Nan was talking to his father on the phone. Wang Ling saw a text message. Dad, don't gamble anymore. Come back, Mom needs you. I got 1st place in my grade in the final exam, and the school specially approved a super panacea for me. As long as I sell it, I'll definitely be able to pay off your debt. As long as you promise me that you won't gamble anymore and come back to Mom to apologize, I'll sell that super panacea. He was waiting for his father's message. But his father still hadn't replied. Wang Ling's emotions were a little complicated when he read this message. At that moment, Lin Nan, who had been waiting for his father's reply, suddenly felt a chill run through his body, and he couldn't help shivering. Lin Nan picked up the air conditioner remote control on the table and glanced at it. The room temperature was currently 25 degrees Celsius. It shouldn't be that cold. But what was with that chill he was feeling? At that moment, Lin Nan didn't know that Pen's spirit had already locked onto him. In the ballpoint pen in his hand, a dark spirit body slowly extended out. It was a long-haired female ghost dressed in a red dress. She wore high heels, and the spirit that flowed out from the pen slowly gathered behind Lin Nan. Lin Nan could feel a chill on his neck, but he did not know the reason for it. When the female ghost stretched out her long nails, which were covered in red polish, toward Lin Nan's neck, Wang Ling slowly raised his hand and pressed it down on the ghost's shoulder. "You're Pen's spirit, right?" Wang Ling cocked his neck and spoke telepathically. The female ghost in red was so scared that her hair stood on end. She hadn't noticed that there was another person standing behind her at all. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. "You." The female ghost turned her head in disbelief, but she was so weak that she couldn't even see Wang Ling's spirit. However, the female ghost was very sure that there was someone behind her. Moreover, this person's hand was already one step ahead of her and was strangling her neck. "Let go," Wang Ling said coldly. This wasn't a discussion, but a pure order. Helpless, the female ghost could only withdraw her claws and raise her hands in surrender. "What kind of ghost are you?" "I'm the Crispy Noodles ghost." Crispy Noodles ghost. Pen's spirit was stunned. She had never heard of this guy before. "Why did you harm him?" Wang Ling continued to speak telepathically. He felt that he had never spoken so much in his life before. But Wang Ling himself was really curious. His gossipy heart was now purely because of that guy Dopey Gua. "If he doesn't study hard, of course I'll kill him," the female ghost said righteously. Wang Ling was shocked by this reason. "Also, before I kill him, I'll help him finish all his homework. I'll make everyone who doesn't study hard feel ashamed. I'll make them go to hell with regret, and..." Bang! Before Pen's spirit could finish speaking, Wang Ling had already squeezed her neck until it exploded. What a boring battle, Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He glanced at Lin Nan. Before leaving, Wang Ling did something else. He cleared out all the homework that Pen's spirit had written for Lin Nan, his own homework. Write it himself. Chapter 902. All the exorcists in the exorcism competition were stunned by Wang Ling's quick action. They could see that Boss Jean was on a roll this year. Without competition from Mr. Fong, Boss Jean indeed had the potential to compete for the top 3. But the competition had just begun, and the biggest boss, Pen's spirit, had already been eliminated. This caught everyone off guard. This Pen's spirit was known as the most difficult malicious ghost to find in all these years. So, the other side had already confirmed their position long ago, and were crouching next to Pen's spirit, waiting for the competition to start and then directly eliminate it. But before everyone could recover from their astonishment, another system announcement came from the exorcism center. Team Jean Ku has broken the record for killing the devil at the top of the leaderboard. The time taken for this kill is 0.001 seconds. Note, the previous record was 12:21:44. This kill is valid. We also welcome all exorcists to bravely break the record. When the exorcists in various parts of Huaxiao saw this kill record, they all threw their compasses and exorcism magic artifacts to the ground with FPA. F***K. Isn't this a scam? 0.001 seconds. This is breaking your brother-in-law's new record? At the top of the exorcism center, President Yang Hua was on duty in his office. The giant screen in front of him was marked with all kinds of red dots, which were the exorcists who had been assigned to various regions to capture devils. When the news of Boss Jin's kill arrived, President Yang Hua was also puzzled. This had been too fast. And there was no possibility of cheating at all. President. I've already investigated the members of Boss Jin's team. Standing next to Yang Hua was a female secretary who had just investigated some information. These 4 people have very ordinary backgrounds and identities. One of them is a minor. We're still verifying the details. The truth was that when Audjua had submitted his identity, he hadn't submitted his real identity information for fear of causing trouble. Only the age was correct and the identity information on it. In order to make his fake identity look more authentic, he had deliberately kept Wang Ling's age and added a minor to the team. You can check the information on that minor. The female secretary, That youngster's surname is gone and his first name is Crispy. Yang Hua was blank. Why is there such a surname? What's his relationship with Gong Jiang? The secretary replied, I don't know. Okay. Then you can investigate further. If you really can't find anything, you can call Boss Jean and ask for more details. This is very important to us. The prize pool for this year's exorcism competition has exceeded all previous ones. It's all for the sake of finding a powerful exorcist who can complete one task for me. At this point, Yang Hua fell silent. The appearance of Boss Jin's team rekindled President Yang's hope. The secretary nodded. All right, Mr. President. I'll get back to work first. Yang Hua instructed, pay attention to your privacy. Huaxiao Alliance absolutely can't know about this. The female secretary, yes. This subordinate will be careful. President Yang Hua sighed in his heart as he stood in front of the French window. Some time ago, because of a mistake in the exorcism center, they had accidentally loosened the seal on a 10,000-year-old devil, and in a few days, this devil would be reborn. He didn't have much time left. If Huaxiao Alliance found out about this, he might not be able to keep his position as president of the exorcism center. On the other hand, in Manager Jin's shop, Manager Jean received many congratulatory messages and messages from people. Old Jean. Who on earth did you recruit as a member of your team? Can you let me know? Or maybe we can work together next year. I can invest in that shop of yours. Dear old Jean. Congratulations, you've killed the pen spirit. I've already asked you in all sincerity, so can you tell me in all sincerity who on earth is in your team? In an instant, Manager Jean received almost 100 text messages with the same content. All of them were asking about the team members and congratulating them in passing. Manager Jean sighed and felt that this scene was a little surreal. Previously, when his shop number 83 was about to close down, he had tried to borrow some money through his contact list, but none of them had replied at all. Now that the situation had changed, these people had suddenly become opportunists again. Boss Jean, aren't you going to reply? Audra asked. He saw that Boss Jin's phone had already entered ghost animal mode since the news of the kill had spread. The text messages hadn't stopped since the beginning, and the phone screen kept flashing and then going off. Looking at these messages, Boss Jean was clearly a little distraught, and he directly turned off his phone. Thank you very much for this time, Boss Jean said to Audra and the others. Boss Jean said to Audra and the others, as for the remaining two devils ranked second and third, boss, are you talking about the man-eating pigeon and the lemon spirit? Fong Xing smiled slightly. Our second and third teams have already locked onto their positions. So fast, most of these devils are spirits. As long as they're strong enough, there's no need to use a magic compass to locate them. You just need to sit at home and use your aura to get a rough idea of where they are, and then you can search for them. Furthermore, the man-eating pigeon and the lemon spirit aren't very strong, they're just at the soul formation stage. If it weren't for this team-building activity, we wouldn't even bother with such weak ghosts. Saying this, Fong Xing looked at the text, then raised his head and said, I've confirmed it. Sect leaders said that a lot of exorcists are currently searching for these two devils, and told us to wait a while before we act. We don't want them to have a bad gaming experience and have a mental breakdown. Boss Jean and his assistant Ling Huan's jaws dropped when they heard this. This bunch of people, who on earth were they? They had thought that Audra of the General Administration of 100 schools was already ridiculously strong, and had never expected that his friends would also be freaks. Coming back to his senses, Boss Jean wiped at his sweat. In any case, thank you very much. Also, I've already texted her about the scabbard you're looking for, and she's on her way. Boss Jean, what do you mean? Actually, I never told you before. The scabbard of that peachwood sword also gave birth to a weapon spirit, and it's a very beautiful girl. I've always raised her at home as my daughter. Everyone, little Scabbard is already on her way, you'll see her in a bit. She's usually more of a homebody, but I promised her that I'd buy her a game with my bonus, so she agreed to come over. Everyone and Wong Ling. Chapter 903. It was only then that Audrey realized that they seemed to have been tricked by Boss Jean. Previously, Boss Jean had repeatedly emphasized that the Peachwood sword's origin was a token of love between him and his girlfriend, and had completely avoided talking about the scabbard nurturing a weapon spirit. Audrey had thought that it was only because of the token of love, which was why Boss Jean had such a deep impression of the Peachwood sword. After all, it had already been 10 years. But now they finally understood that this Boss Jean had been hiding a mistress in his golden house. For a moment, the room fell silent. About 10 minutes later, a white-haired girl wearing the Lu Ban skin of Number 1 game pushed open the door and entered. In the end, Wong Ling saw this Miss Scabbard. She took off her hat, her eyes empty and lifeless, and the snow-white ahogue on the top of her head straightened up like a sharp sword. At first glance, Wong Ling felt that he and Jinka did indeed look like a married couple. She was about 15 years old, and a little older than Jinka. She had developed quite well, and was in all the right places, and was the right size. "Dad, let me tell you something. I'll only give you 10 minutes. You can't go back on your promise to buy me a game disc." As soon as she entered, the girl sat down in a random chair with a straight face, then crossed her arms and stared at the people in front of her. She swept her gaze over Dog 2, Fong Xing and Audrey one by one before finally fixing it on Wong Ling. After observing him for a while, she nodded. No wonder Dad's exorcism convention went so smoothly this year. These guys are indeed a lot better than last year's. Goods, the corner of Fong Xing's forehead twitched visibly. It was one thing for her to call him Goods, but she actually dared to call Wong Ling that. Audrey wiped at his sweat and felt that this Miss Scabbard really had a fiery temper. What powerful spirit power, Dog 2 thought inwardly. Boss Jean wasn't lying to them. This girl was indeed a weapon spirit, and Dog 2 could sense that the spirit power structure of a weapon spirit was rather special. But Dog 2 had to admit that this was the first time it had seen a weapon spirit in human form, because in most cases, a weapon spirit preferred to stay in its original body. This was because a weapon spirit would consume a lot of its spirit power in its human form. But this Miss Scabbard didn't seem to care about this at all. Or perhaps it was better to say that her human form didn't seem to have any spirit power restrictions. What was going on? But Face was quite confused. "Let me introduce you all. This is my daughter, Jean Baiqiao." Boss Jean wiped his sweat as he introduced her, seeming very helpless about his daughter. But Miss Scabbard frowned, as if she was very unhappy with Boss Jin's introduction. "How many times have I told you? My surname isn't Jean, it's Baiqiao." "Dad, please correct your position. Don't casually add a surname to me. The only reason I call you Daddy is because the name you signed on the contract is Daddy." Everyone, Boss Jean was rendered speechless by Fong Chi's retort. After a long moment of silence, Audrey was the first to break the silence. Given Miss Baiqiao's fighting strength, if she participates in the exorcism convention, she will definitely help Boss Jean get a good ranking. This was the truth, as well as the legendary boast. After all, this was the first time they had met, and in Audrey's understanding, it was necessary to say something nice to make people feel comfortable. But this Miss Baiqiao didn't buy it. She stared at Audrey and chuckled. "Given my strength, it's naturally easy for me to take care of those low-level devils, but they aren't worthy of me taking action. As for you, I know you're called Audrey, right? The one who's been on TV a lot lately." Audrey was delighted. "Miss, do you know me?" "Of course I do, you're the king of scraps." You can fool other people, but you can't fool me. Bai Qiao stared at awed Zhua and snorted. But I can't be bothered to expose your little tricks. Well, water doesn't interfere with river water, and exposing you won't do me any good. You have a lot of fans now. If I expose you online, I'll be flamed. Awed Zhua. This second retort caused awed Zhua to fall silent. Dog 2 couldn't take it anymore. This girl had a sharp tongue. It felt that as a loyal dog, it was time to show off the literary skills it had accumulated in the human world. Who didn't know how to insult people? But before it could speak, Bai Qiao stared at Dog 2. You're that demon king from 6 years ago, right? Not long after you fell down, you were punched through the stomach, and now you've turned into a spirit dog, neither a demon nor a dog. You think you've learned some human culture in the human world, and you want to cause trouble here. You stand alone in collusion, you walk alone, enlightened. You don't even know how to sing the song, Rare Words, do you? But Face burst into tears and shut himself in. After rebuking the third king, Bai Qiao then turned her gaze to Fang Xing. You're quite capable, but you're still lacking compared to me. I know you, immortal Shipai's son. Daughter. It's really giving birth to a child. Awed Zhua, Dog 2 and Fang Xing were stupefied. Could this girl be the legendary woman who had read the script? Finally, Bai Qiao's gaze turned to Wang Ling. Don't think that I won't dare insult you just because you have a pretty boy's face and fierce dead fish eyes. Pretending to be very weak and putting on a poker face, who are you trying to show off? Don't you know how strong you are? All the strong people have gone to save the world, but you're still in high school. Wang Ling, people say you copied Nano Chi Mu. Why don't you dye your hair pink and put a lollipop in your hair? So what if you got a talisman on you when you were little? Who are you showing off by sealing the 3000 heavenly Tao? Destroy the world if you have the ability. Don't quibble. I don't know you very well, but gossip is a fearful thing. You were in a stroller when you were born. You copied someone else's settings, and you still won't admit it. Wang Ling, forget about being in high school, there aren't many lines in the book. You can clearly speak, but you insist on using telepathy to make yourself look very low-key. So what if you know the 3000 Great Tao? So what if you know how to cultivate? So what if you're omnipotent? You're just a guy who likes to peek behind the scenes and stir up trouble. So what if you send ellipses? I can do that too. Wang Ling. I can't take it anymore. This is too much. But Face couldn't stand it anymore. He clapped his paw and stared at Manager Jean. Can I hit your daughter? Boss Jean smiled bitterly. Everyone, please go ahead. As soon as he said that, Fang Xing, Awed Zhua and Dog 2 all lunged forward. You think 3 stinky fish and shrimps are worthy of fighting me? Bai Qiao sneered. At that moment, the ahog on the top of her head shone and turned into a whip of light that swept out. Mobile version, M. Chapter 904. 1 against 3 was a situation that no one present had expected. Forget her poisonous tongue, Bai Qiao's temper was far more violent than they had imagined. That long ahog swept out like a godly whip, instantly splitting Boss Jin's shop in two. Wang Ling unhurriedly pressed down on Boss Jin's and Ling Huan's heads to help them avoid Bai Qiao's attack. At the same time, he was left speechless by this kind of indiscriminate fighting style. My shop. My merchandise. My priceless exorcism magic artifact. It was a mess in front of him, and Boss Jin, holding his head, instantly turned into a world-famous painting called The Scream. Fang Xing seized the opportunity to grab Bai Qiao's ahog. He could see that this was the key to fighting Bai Qiao. As long as he could control it, Bai Qiao wouldn't be able to do anything. You're too inexperienced to control me. Bai Qiao didn't care about Fang Xing at all, however, and snorted. In the next moment, the ahog on the top of her head actually separated on its own. At the same time, a brand new ahog grew out from the top of her head. At that moment, the broken ahog that Fong Xing had grabbed earlier was vaporizing as it gradually turned into a ball of spirit energy and disappeared. Audiobook rushed forward. He was covered from head to toe in the equipment Wang Ling had given him, and his true battle strength was stronger than his realm looked. His feet shook, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Bai Qiao. At the same time, the fingerless gloves in his hands burst forth with light as he threw them at Bai Qiao. But Bai Qiao didn't even raise her eyes in the face of such a fierce attack. Too slow. Bai Qiao swung the ahog at Audiobook, and his suit was directly torn to shreds, but he wasn't injured or bleeding. A golden light completely blocked the remaining power of Bai Qiao's ahog. After the golden light dissipated, Bai Qiao saw Audiobook in bright red long johns. Just as she was amazed at the strong defense of the long johns, Dog 2 lunged at her from the other side. Basic dog skills. Hit. Loopy Toad was merciless. After a long period of cultivation, its basic dog skills had already reached the maximum level, and it could now throw 1,000 punches in a second. Bone King. The moment it used the dog skills, Loopy Toad also took out its life-bonded magic weapon and turned the Bone King into a pair of spiked gloves that were as white as jade, which it wore on its paws. For a moment, fist shadows flew everywhere, causing the air to tremble. Bai Qiao was slightly surprised at the astonishing frequency of its punches. This dog's performance was a lot better than she had imagined. It was clearly a demon king, but it was actually able to fuse with an ordinary Akita's body to this extent. Interesting. Bai Qiao smiled, and the ahog on the top of her head suddenly split into countless tiny hairs which flew out to collide with the fist shadows that filled the sky. A frightening aura and spiritual pressure emanated from Bai Qiao. Bai Qiao's expression was calm and unperturbed, and she didn't hide her insolence at all. Even when dealing with Loopy Toad, she didn't hold back at all. Like Buddha's 3,000 strands of worry, the strands of hair swung out to block all the attacks, and Loopy Toad completely lost its temper. In the end, the hair was waving faster and faster, and Buttface felt he couldn't resist it any longer. Frowning, Fong Xing's expression shook. White Knight spell. Almost instantly, Fong Xing completed his transformation, and 10 snake scales shot out to cut off all of Bai Qiao's hair. Now, Boss Jean and Ling Huan finally understood what Bai Qiao meant when she said, "Have children." It turned out this brother Fong Xing. He was a horse monkey shoju. After the transformation, Fong Xing's aura and battle strength soared to a whole new level, and Bai Qiao's expression finally changed. One punch. Fong Xing approached her so quickly that Bai Qiao was dazed. This punch smashed into Bai Qiao's body, and there was the sound of godly metal colliding. Bai Qiao was sent flying straight out of the shop. It was only at that moment that Bai Qiao's expression finally turned serious. The strongest person, sure enough, it was that youngster from inside. It was only after she was sent flying out of the shop that Bai Qiao realized that she had been dragged into a layered space at some point. This was an ability similar to the inner world, and a fight in a layered space wouldn't affect reality. None of the 3 people currently fighting her could do such a thing. The only person who could possibly use this divine ability was that ordinary-looking youngster in the shop. Because of her earlier mockery, Bai Qiao had a rough idea of Wang Ling's identity, which was inextricably linked to her. But Bai Qiao realized that she had still underestimated Wang Ling's strength. The moment the fight started, he had actually pulled everyone in the shop into a layered space. Furthermore, he had done it so silently that even Bai Qiao hadn't sensed it. Bai Qiao kept an eye on this kind of extraordinary ability. Chi! At that moment, Fong Xing, who had cast the White Knight spell in her goddess of war form, took out the 40-meter-long saber from the crack in her chest. When the saber was drawn, the blade shone with an astonishing light as it slashed down with powerful spiritual pressure. Bai Qiao took a deep breath, and the ahog on the top of her head split into two to turn into two giant hands that caught the 40-meter-long saber firmly in midair. However, this spiritual pressure was so enormous that Bai Qiao's body couldn't stabilize in the air, and she sank a little. But this didn't put Bai Qiao in a desperate situation. She used all her strength to move the 40-meter-long saber away. Fang Xing was stunned to find that the ahog's attack had actually cracked the saber. It's over. Bai Qiao smiled indifferently at Fang Xing, and at the same time, she took something out of her pocket. Fang Xing thought that the other party was going to take out some magic treasure, but in the end, he saw Miss Bai Qiao actually take out a bottle of hair conditioner that she had prepared beforehand from her pocket, and pour the entire bottle over her head. The nutrients in the conditioner were instantly absorbed by the ahog. In a split second, as everyone could see, the ahog on Miss Bai Qiao's head rapidly grew upward like a divine tree, and in the end, it actually turned into an ancient golden sword that glowed with magic light all over. Not good. Fang Xing instinctively sensed danger. This kind of spiritual pressure was so frightening that it was no longer the oppressive force of a true immortal. Fang Xing was well aware that he might not be able to withstand this sword. Even if he didn't die, he would be bedridden at home for half a month. Are you afraid? But it's too late. However, this Miss Bai Qiao had no intention of stopping at all. Whoosh! Brandishing the ahog, she chopped down at Fang Xing's head with the momentum of a deity splitting the sea, and the nearby space collapsed inch by inch. But in the next moment, Bai Qiao realized that her ahog godly sword was actually being held back by a force, and couldn't advance even an inch. At some point, a figure had suddenly appeared in front of her swordsmanship. It was a child who looked no more than 10 years old, dressed in brown clothes with a white robe draped over it. He had blocked her attack with just one small arm. Chapter 905. It's Lord Jinka. Zhuo got excited. Everyone turned to look at the skinny figure in the sky. As always, the legendary Lord of Sword Spirits displayed his formidable battle strength. With just one arm, he blocked an attack that even Fang Xing, who was in her goddess of war form, had to admit would be hard to resist. Below, Boss Jean and his employee, Ling Huan, were completely dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally understood why this group of people could eliminate the brush spirit the moment the exorcism convention began. That was a power on a completely different level. Boss, don't talk, I need to calm down. At that moment, Boss Jean and his employees were both taking deep breaths. Jinka's appearance in the air stunned Bai Qiao's arrogant and despotic face. She frowned and secretly exerted force, but found that her ahog divine sword couldn't advance even an inch. This child's strength was astonishing. Judging from its aura, it didn't seem to be that strong. Go away, I don't hit children. Bai Qiao stared at Jinka with a strange feeling in her heart. She was formed by heaven and earth and born of the sun and moon, so she had the power to know everything in the world. This was why Bai Qiao had the guts to lash out and ridicule everyone when she came to the shop. But in the entire process, there were two people she couldn't completely see through. One was that youngster called Wang Ling. Although her venomous tongue sounded a lot, it was in fact all on the surface. Bai Qiao didn't fully understand this youngster. And now, there was another troublesome character here. It was the child who had suddenly appeared in front of her. Bai Qiao could vaguely sense the connection between the child in front of her and her. But she didn't want to admit it. She was used to being free and undisciplined. The human world was rich and colorful, and there were so many games that she needed to play. She didn't have time to play house with a child. Follow me back. Jinka stared at Bai Qiao, and his languid tone was the same as usual. He clearly had the body of a child, but there was an unquestionable sense of dominance in his tone. Bai Qiao sneered. Don't order me around. I have a lot of games to play today. There was still much to see. My favorite author, Ku Xian's new book, The Only Koi in the Cultivation World, is going to be published today. I still have to hurry to subscribe for him. Look at him cross-dressing. Everyone present was dumbfounded when they heard such an ample reason. But in the face of this arrogant and resilient otaku, Jinka's expression didn't change in the slightest from beginning to end. His gloomy gaze gave Bai Qiao goosebumps all over. It was said that spirit swords took after their masters, and Bai Qiao could see that this child looked exactly like its master, who was watching the show from below. The master was not easy to deal with, and the sword spirit was not easy to deal with either. It looks like I'll have to be a little more serious. Bai Qiao sighed in her heart, and then her expression turned serious. Treasury of hairs. In the next moment, everyone saw the Ahog divine sword in the air actually split into countless fine needles. Under Bai Qiao's control, these thousands of fine needles rained down on Jinka. All this time, Jinka hadn't let down his guard. With a flick of his sleeve, a protective sword light formed in his small hand, and this attack of fine hair, which was like a torrential storm of tang sect pear blossom needles, was dispelled by this brown protective sword light. Audra couldn't help saying, judging from Miss Bai Qiao's reaction after Lord Jinka showed up, it doesn't look like she doesn't know who he is. But every move she makes is deadly, and focuses on vital parts. Down below, Audra, Dog 2 and Fang Xing all blushed with shame as they watched. This kind of scene of domestic violence was really frightening to watch. The needles that were like a rainstorm descended onto the ground like a myriad of shooting stars, and they blasted the ground to the point it was in a complete mess and was covered in scars. Countless houses in an area of a few tens of kilometers were instantly destroyed and smashed into pieces, and it was a horrifying scene. However, this still wasn't Miss Bai Qiao's full strength. Fang Xing was well aware that this Miss Bai Qiao's overall battle strength was above that of a true immortal. And the same was true of Lord Jinka's battle strength. This was a showdown between the sword spirit and the scabbard spirit, and it would be very hard to predict the outcome until the very last moment. But while the current situation looked blurry, it was very clear who was on the offensive and the defensive. Miss Bai Qiao's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. Their auras exploded on the field, and each blast of spirit power exploded in all directions. Everything in the wake of the ripples was destroyed, and the grass, trees, and houses were all turned to dust. It was as if the end of the world had come. Their spirit power was so powerful that it directly materialized and rushed out to destroy the grass and trees. Jinka, on the other hand, was on the defense from beginning to end. What? You're not going to attack me? Miss Bai Qiao laughed wildly. Suddenly, she was enjoying the feeling of fighting a little. She had been cooped up at home for too long, and it wasn't bad to come out and exercise every once in a while. She originally didn't want to be too heavy-handed with a child, but for some reason, Bai Qiao actually felt that the more she fought, the more exciting it became. She didn't know when it had started, but she couldn't take her eyes off Jinka. As the battle progressed, a strong obsession kept lingering in her mind. Wang Ling could actually understand this kind of scenario very well. It was like when you were at school and your female deskmate kept trying to pinch your thigh. You thought she was bullying you, so you went to tell the teacher. The truth was that the girl liked you, but didn't know how to express it in words. It was like the boy in the back row always grabbing the girl in the front row's pigtails. Thus, most straight men would lose a beautiful relationship after their thighs were pinched, and now, Bai Qiao's feelings couldn't be any worse. The more she fought, the more she wanted to bully him. Ahog, throw up. Bai Qiao was brimming with fighting spirit. She extended her ahog infinitely, wrapping Jinka up in layers. Then, like a rocket, the ahog on the top of her head directly sent Jinka, who had curled up into a ball, into outer space, where it circled the earth several times in a row. In the end, he turned into a meteor and crashed down hard. Not good. Fang Xing realized that things weren't looking good. If this meteor crashed down, it would definitely cause a huge disaster. But at that moment, Jinka's aura finally emerged, and a powerful gravitational force came from the dumpling wrapped in a hogue. Everyone had no time to react at all. On the other side, Bai Qiao was already sent flying with a blood-curdling aya. When everyone came back to their senses, Bai Qiao's two pure white legs were already firmly on Jinka's shoulders. Ah Jua, this is Jinka assassinating King Qin. Dog 2 didn't quite understand. But Miss Bai Qiao isn't the person with the most hair. No, Fang Xing shook his head and gave an aggressive analysis. The reason why Miss Bai Qiao's ahogue can extend infinitely is very likely because it absorbs nutrients from the other hairs on her body. Thus, Lord Jinka deduces that ahogue is also related to her leg hair. Furthermore, after the ahogue extends infinitely, it's already longer than all of us here. All of our leg hair put together isn't as long as one of Miss Bai Qiao's ahogue, right? Everyone was stunned. There was this kind of operation. Chapter 906. For any girl, it was an extremely humiliating thing to have both of her thighs carried by a man. Miss Bai Qiao was naturally the same. She already had no time to worry about the fight, and covered her face with both hands, completely at a loss. The last person who had shown this expression had been the scholarly girl by the riverbank. At that moment, their postures and expressions almost overlapped across time and space, and Wang Ling couldn't help secretly clapping his hands in amazement at the sight. It was very clear that Miss Bai Qiao had lost because she was a scabbard. As a scabbard, she and Jinka came from the same source, and her true battle strength was about the same as Jinka's. But as a scabbard, Miss Bai Qiao had forgotten her identity as a scabbard. A scabbard existed to protect the sword itself. But Miss Bai Qiao had just gone berserk from the fight, and had put the cart before the horse as she actually wanted to press the sword under her body. Jinka had no choice but to activate his passive skill, Jinka assassinates King Qin. This move had actually existed from the very beginning to limit the scabbard's strength. The layers of space dissipated, and everything nearby returned to normal. The broken world returned to normal the moment the layers of space were lifted. It was as if nothing had happened. The shattered ground and the smell of smoke from the battle had disappeared. Everything had disappeared. Miss Bai Qiao hugged her knees as she crouched in a chair. She wasn't noisy anymore, and had already lost her initial arrogance. She just pulled the cap on her head very, very low, and started to sob rhythmically. Woo! Woo woo! Woo 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 woo! Woo 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 woo! Although she was sobbing, Miss Bai Qiao didn't shed a single tear. Is Miss Bai Qiao trying to say something? Ah Chua scratched his head. He suspected that she wasn't crying at all, but was trying to express something. Who would cry with musical notes? It was like Morse code. No, this was the Morse sword code. Standing next to her, Jinka translated expressionlessly. She said that she has no face to see anyone. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and Dog 2, woo-ah. 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 She said that even if she was beaten to death, or jumped down from here, she wouldn't be my scabbard. Woo-ah. Ah. Woo-woo-woo-ah-ah-ah. She said that love between an older woman and a younger man won't end well. In fact, this wasn't the first time Miss Bai Qiao had cried. She was usually like this when Boss Jean didn't buy games for her. But Boss Jean didn't understand a single word of Miss Bai Qiao's Morse sword code. In the end, despite Bai Qiao's special background, she was still a little girl. Under normal circumstances, when a young lady cried, there was usually a hidden meaning in it. However, this was not the way to go on. They couldn't get any information, and naturally couldn't understand this Miss Bai Qiao's heart. The only thing he knew was that Bai Qiao still missed city life, and wasn't willing to go back to being a well-behaved scabbard. They had painstakingly searched for the scabbard because they wanted the scabbard back. But you can't use force on a girl. These were all consensual matters. Miss Bai, if you keep crying like this, only Lord Jinko will understand. You have to calm down, then tell us what you want and we'll think of a way to solve it together, Audra said earnestly. Then, he pushed Fang Xing over. Fang Xing. Audra said telepathically, classmate Fang Xing. Lord Jinka's happiness is also related to Shifu's happiness. Little girls like you the most when you're a man, so we're counting on you. To be honest, Fang Xing had refused at first. He was actually quite a vengeful person, and had been very unhappy with Bai Qiao's mockery of his gender earlier. The White Knight spell was his father's unique secret technique, and he had no choice but to change gender after using it. But Bai Qiao had actually used this to personally attack him, which directly caused Fang Xing's impression of this Miss Bai Qiao to turn negative from the very beginning. But Audju's words reminded him. Swords follow their masters. Since ancient times, spirit swords and their masters had been inextricably linked. It was like the personal maids of noble ladies in ancient times. Ladies naturally had to be concerned about their maids' happiness. If their maids were doing well, the ladies would also be happy. So, this was all for Wang Ling's sake. Thus, Fang Xing took a deep breath and decided to brace himself. Miss Bai Qiao, if there's anything you're unhappy about, you can tell me. My chest is all for girls to lean on. Fang Xing flipped his beautiful blonde hair and then held out a hand to Bai Qiao in a very gentlemanly manner. After a few minutes, Bai Qiao stopped sobbing. She looked up at Fang Xing, her eyes empty. Everyone was overjoyed at this scene. It had actually worked. When all was said and done, she was still a girl. Audjuo was secretly delighted. Just as he was sighing in his heart that Fang Xing was worthy of being a girl killer, Bai Qiao suddenly swatted Fang Xing's hand away. F***CKU. I don't talk to dead ladyboys. Fang Xing, I'll F***CKU, classmate Fang Xing, calm down. Audjuo hurriedly stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Fang Xing's waist. Let go of me. I'm going to have a showdown with her today. Everyone knew that at that moment, Fang Xing's heart was on the verge of collapse. Everyone had their own pain. Fang Xing himself was helpless in his own pain. After all, this was something his father had left him. For a moment, the room fell into silence. Bai Qiao knew she had said the wrong thing, and buried her head in her knees again. Just as Boss Jean had said, Bai Qiao had been raised by his side all these years, and was already used to being free and undisciplined. Furthermore, it was said that this venomous tongue had been stimulated by her noob teammates when she had been playing games. So much so that her venomous tongue had already become a habit of hers. Calling her a dead lady boy was indeed too much. But in fact, it was unintentional. She just didn't want Fang Xing to get close to her. Who would have thought that she would blurt out the word dead lady boy? Miss Bai Qiao, things have already come to this point, so why don't you be straightforward? What other wishes do you have? Audra stared at Bai Qiao and said, actually, your return doesn't mean that you'll lose your freedom. You can still play the games you want. No one will restrict you. But you can't forget that you and Lord Jinka are one. Can I have any wish? Any wish? Audra nodded. Bai Qiao raised her head and instantly perked up. I want to develop a game. Chapter 907. Bai Qiao's wish was unexpectedly unique, but it wasn't impossible. After the exorcism convention, Boss Jean received a huge bonus. He was exceptionally good to his wild daughter, even if in Bai Qiao's eyes, this daddy Boss Jean was nothing more than a tool for her to enjoy herself. After discussing the conditions, Bai Qiao and Wang Ling signed a new agreement. As long as Wang Ling could fulfill her wish to develop a game, Bai Qiao was willing to return. But now, there was another problem. Everyone here was made for playing games, not making them. Not only did games need to be creative, they had also been progressively stricter in recent years. A lot of new games couldn't even get approval from the relevant departments, and in the end ended up rotting in the hands of the game companies themselves. The result of such a huge investment was that the game couldn't even be sold. For a moment, game companies large and small in the market were in a predicament. Thus, the problem was what type of game to make. The MOBA games that had always dominated the top of the list were dominated by large game companies such as Horse Goose and NetHard. If they developed a similar type of game, it would be very difficult to get a slice of the cake from these game companies. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if the game was really excellent, small game companies couldn't compare to these established companies in terms of server operation and maintenance alone. Once a large number of users poured in, the servers would most likely blow up. But Bai Qiao already had her own ideas about game design. If a new game wanted to find its place in the monopolized game market, creativity was the key factor. It was August 29th, the 16th day of the summer break. Wang Ling's room was unprecedentedly lively as a lot of people came. Wang Ming, who had been oppressed in the lab by Zhai Yin for a long time, also came, but it wasn't Wang Ming himself, but the long-range mecha armor he was controlling, Wang Ling too. After the last trip to Beast King's remains, the newly developed Wang Ling 2 had already been upgraded and improved on the basis of Wang Ling 1. Not only could it be controlled remotely for combat, it could also be recalled with one click to merge with the original body. The most important thing was that Wang Ling 2 had basically turned into an artificial intelligence and had its own consciousness. In other words, Wang Ling 2's function was now infinitely close to that of the high-level clone, Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch, which Wang Ling had created with the Great Separation spell, and its memories would also be synchronized with Wang Ming's brain. The only difference was that Wang Ling 2's fighting strength wasn't as strong as Crispy Noodle's Dao Monarch's. In the room, Dog 2, Jinka, Little Silver, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling 2 formed a circle around Bai Qiao. "Tell me about your design first, then leave the rest to me," Wang Ling 2 said, the synthesized voice of the virtual human with Wang Ming's distinct voice. "I want to design a sandbox cultivation simulation game with a high degree of freedom." At the mention of the game, Bai Qiao's expression lit up, and her eyes lit up. "I'm going to call this game Cultivation Simulator. The characters, spells, cultivation techniques, magic artifacts, including the world itself, can all be designed on their own. What the players have to do is not to manage the characters, but to manage the entire world. They have to consider the balance of the various forces in the world and maintain the order of the world itself, so that the world they create can achieve sustainable development. This is the key to this game. So, the key to the game is to operate the entire world. Is there a pay-to-win mechanism?" Little Silver asked. As a fellow gaming fan, Little Silver had been living at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house for the last few months, and had played all the games on the leaderboard and all the ones that could be played with pay-to-win. What Little Silver abhorred the most was that Dungeon and Devils on Earth. This game's weapon-strengthening mechanism really left Little Silver speechless. He had even thrown in the money for takeout, but couldn't upgrade it no matter what. Later, Little Silver had watched videos online and realized that those who had successfully upgraded their weapons kowtowed as they did so, and used their foreheads to click the mouse to show their sincerity. Pay-to-win doesn't exist. This is an absolutely fair game. But in order to set up a profit point, you can make some clothes to sell. Can wearing clothes increase your attributes? For example, 10 attack points. Little Silver raised his hand and asked. "No." Bai Qiao shook her head resolutely. "Then what about power struggles?" "This will happen naturally after you design the world's parameters and basic characters. For example, you can set up how many major forces the world will be divided into, how they will be distributed, and so on. But the composition of the forces and the scale of their construction will depend on the character parameters. Each character's talent, attributes, personality, and so on. Players can freely design them from the start. In the preset world, these characters will develop freely according to their attributes and personalities, and finally form their own forces according to the preset script. All of this can't be controlled. You need to set up a good personality at the beginning. Can we set up a world without evil people? Dog2 asked. Yes. In this free cultivation world, the players were God. If you want to set up a perfect world without evil forces, that's naturally not a problem. But whether such a world could continue to operate in the end was a problem. Everyone has heard the story of the catfish and the sardines, right? Civilization grows in strife. Without pursuit and desire to change, the world itself won't progress, Bai Qiao said. Wang Ling too nodded. I more or less understand what you mean, but sandbox games also need a template and some basic programming parameters. I need some real data to use as a reference. Right after Wang Ming said this, before Wang Ling could say anything, Book of Sage Immortal suddenly said, I've calculated that there's a 98% chance that my lord will have me find a suitable world for simulation. Wang Ling, can you do it with this heavily corrupted tablet? Bai Qiao's eyes sparkled. Yes, Miss Bai Qiao. It's very simple. Book of Sage Immortal replied. Book of Sage Immortal then projected an image of an earthy blue planet. These are the parameters of Earth from the 10th universe 600 million years ago. Now, Miss Bai Qiao, you can create your character. I'll use the current development of the 10th universe to make calculations and simulate future developments. It's not just Miss Bai Qiao, everyone else here can try to create your own characters. Let's see what kind of impact they'll have on the world in the future after they've been created. Saying this, Book of Sage Immortal turned its gaze to Wang Ling. My lord, do you want to create the first character first? Book of Sage Immortal was well aware that its master was, after all, Wang Ling giving its lord priority in creating a character was equivalent to giving him face, and there was a 78% chance that he wouldn't smash it. Chapter 908. Funding and setting up a server weren't a problem. As for the specific design of the game, Wang Ming would rearrange the structure and algorithm of the entire game based on the parameters recorded in Book of Sage Immortal Simulation Experiment. This was just a game. Over the years, Wang Ming had created so many strange magic treasures, and even the humanoid magic treasure Head of State 001, which was used in battle, had been created by him. The difficulty of designing these scientific cultivation magic treasures was far higher than that of a game. After confirming the general direction, the simulation experiment became the most important factor. Wang Ling stared at the image projected by Book of Sage Immortal and fell into deep thought. To be honest, he still hadn't thought about what kind of person he wanted to build. At that moment, Wang Ming, who was remotely controlling Wang Ling too, suddenly said, It seems that Ling Ling is still thinking. Should we redefine the world first? What kind of world is the 10th universe? Book of Sage Immortal replied, There are subtle differences between each universe, and cultivation civilizations are uneven. But most of them have already entered the era of national cultivation. The era of national cultivation. This phrase sounded very lofty, but if one were to look back tens of thousands of years, this was simply unimaginable. The first person in the universe to discover the existence of spirit chi and turn it into spirit energy to embark on the path of cultivation was the father of cultivation. Rumor had it that the father of cultivation was also the discoverer and developer of the 3,000 great spells. However, historians had always held different views and debated endlessly who the father of cultivation was. A small number of historians even believed that there was no such thing as a father of cultivation at all. Cultivators had existed since the beginning of the universe. But they were a very small group of high-level people who kept a low profile and passed on the art of cultivation from generation to generation. It wasn't until the study of cultivation gradually expanded bit by bit and the ranks of cultivators continued to grow that the world finally entered the era of national cultivation after tens of thousands of years. In fact, both theories had their own arguments. Wang Ming, on the other hand, believed in the father of cultivation. Above true immortal was true venerated, above true venerated was venerated immortal, and above venerated immortal was Tao venerated. Then what about above Tao venerated? Could there be a higher realm? In that case, could the person with the strongest realm be the legendary father of cultivation? Or perhaps this father of cultivation wasn't the father of cultivation at all. Perhaps he could also be called an immortal king. Wang Ming smiled. Since the 10 universes have already entered an era of universal cultivation, can we establish a world with very few cultivators? This question caused everyone present to be stunned. A world with few cultivators? What does Brother Ming mean? He asked. It's a world dominated by ordinary people. Cultivators only occupy a very small proportion of this world. Moreover, there is an agreement among cultivators that they cannot reveal their identity as cultivators in front of ordinary people. If they violate the agreement, they will suffer the wrath of heaven. Wang Ming said, "Everyone, just think about it. If such a world existed, wouldn't cultivators living in the cracks eventually replace ordinary people and lead the world into an era of national cultivation?" So, this is another spiritual energy revival theme. No, the spiritual energy of the world has always existed, and so have the cultivators. What I want to know is, if 99% of the people in the world are ordinary people and only 1% are cultivators, will this 1% completely replace the other 99% in time? Wang Ming said. This question caused Wang Ling's room to fall silent for a moment. It was Miss Bai Qiao who suddenly laughed. She hadn't thought about this before. As a sandbox simulation game with a cultivator as the theme, Cultivation Emulator allowed players to freely create a world of cultivators, and indeed allowed for this kind of situation. Who said that cultivators had to be the dominant force at the beginning of the world? Bai Qiao thought this proposal was very interesting. This sounds like a very interesting world. In any case, it's just a simulation. Maybe we can give it a try. Then, let's try to set up the parameters of the world. So, is this the world I imagined? Wang Ming also laughed. That's right, the parameters of the world have to be designed from the very beginning. For example, the ratio of cultivators to ordinary people, the ratio of men to women, the initial population of the world and so on. After the most basic parameters are set, the game officially begins. After receiving the first instruction, Book of Sage Immortal immediately started its own simulation settings. After Book of Sage Immortal compiled the parameters of the world, it displayed them in front of everyone. World, a barren world of cultivation, age of the world, for 8 billion years, ratio of ordinary people to cultivators, 99%/1%, civilization state, modern civilization, education level, 9 years of universal compulsory education, world state, peaceful development, power number, 1231, Book of Sage Immortal. Now, you can design your own characters. These people will be born in this world, but how long they can live and how much impact they can have on the world will depend on their specific applications in the world. After that, a chart of the character's attributes appeared in front of everyone. These were the basic attributes, which could be changed freely. Furthermore, the appearances of these characters could all be set by molding their faces. Looking at Jinka's appearance, Bai Qiao made a character that looked similar, but it was a girl. It's done. A cross-dressing version of Jinka. Hiya. Miss Bai Qiao was very pleased with herself. Wow! It really looks like him. Awed Chua praised. But Miss Bai Qiao, it looks like you and Lord Jinka gave birth to you. Bai Qiao's face instantly turned red. Who gave birth to him? She grit her teeth, made the character's hair a little longer, and then added a hogue on top of the character's head. She then quickly corrected herself. It doesn't look like him. I'm molding myself. And so, Bai Qiao's character was as follows: name, by good gender, female intelligence growth, 8/10 endurance growth, 8/10 defense growth, 8/10 strength growth, 8/10 figure growth, 10/10 appearance growth, 10/10 kindness points, 10/10 evil points, 0/10 personality. Silly, why are they all 8 except for appearance and figure? Dog 2 asked. I already said that I'm molding myself, so of course I have to look like me in appearance and figure. As for everything else, I'm the best. I definitely can't be stronger than the me in other worlds. Everyone. What kind of character does Master want to design? Little Silver asked curiously at that moment. Looking at the character panel, Wang Ling had a rough idea of what to do. He started to design his own character. Name, Qin Zong. Chapter 909. The character that Wang Ling had created was a little special. Everyone looked at Wang Kun's pet character data panel. Name, Qin Zong. Gender, male intelligence growth, 2 out of 10 endurance growth, 2 out of 10 defense growth, 2/10 strength growth, 2/10 figure growth, 2 out of 10 appearance growth, 2 out of 10 kindness, 5 out of 10 evil, 5 out of 10 luck, 10 out of 10 personality, good and evil, Buddhist, free and easy, lively. Master has created an ordinary person. But his luck is off the charts. Little Silver thought it was interesting. When Book of Sage Immortal simulated a character with an intelligence growth of 3 or below, it would automatically classify the character as an ordinary person. The character data panel wasn't completely fixed, attributes could be added at will, and it wasn't even possible to set intelligence growth. Then, when the character appeared in the world, it would be a mentally retarded setting. Everyone had custom-made their own characters. All along, Wang Ming had longed to embark on the path of cultivation. He envied Wang Ling, so he had created a cultivator character for himself, and maxed out all the attributes he could. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had positioned himself as a great botanist, and in the zombie crisis of the future, he had successfully developed pea-shooters to fight zombies. While everyone was setting up their characters, Audrey suddenly thought of a question. If we set up these characters and let them live according to the settings in the game world, will they awaken their own consciousness? At that moment, Wang Ming said, this is relative. For us, these people might just be a bunch of data. But as a sandbox game with a high degree of freedom, these game characters who live in it might all have their own consciousness. They might look like they're being manipulated by us, but they also live according to a predetermined way of life in their own world. It sounds a little complicated. Audrey frowned. Then I'll make it simpler. Wang Ming said, just like when we create these game characters, we can be called gods. In that case, have you ever thought that we might have been created by a greater god? Perhaps as we speak, a pair of eyes is watching us. Suddenly, everyone in the room couldn't help shivering. F***K. You scared me. But Face felt as if all the fur on his body was standing on end. It's my fault, I shouldn't have talked about such a scary topic. Audrey wiped the sweat from his forehead. In fact, similar scientific evidence had existed a long time ago, but now that he was looking at it again, he still felt terrified. However, the atmosphere in the room became lively because of this discussion. Looking out the window, he couldn't help feeling a little absent-minded. A world created by God. Wang Ling said in a low voice. Although it was very quiet, Little Silver and Fong Xing heard it clearly. They had realized a long time ago that it wasn't that Wang Ling didn't talk, sometimes, he just didn't want to. Just like Wang Ling, who liked to peek at the screen, this was a master who was outwardly passionate on the inside. What they didn't know was that in that moment of absent-mindedness, something extremely terrifying had happened. August 29th, Tuesday, the 16th day of the summer vacation. A brand new game called Cultivation Simulator had entered the sights of summer vacation students. The high degree of freedom in the gameplay and the godly sense of behind-the-scenes manipulation very quickly attracted a group of beta players. 10,000 gift certificates for beta accounts that didn't delete their files were snapped up within a minute after it was released, and the game's popularity was comparable to that of a special sale at midnight on Double 11. Daoist Guang was very happy to advertise the game in his live stream room. After a period of development and promotion on the platform, Daoist Guang's live stream room had already become the big brother of the big brothers on the platform. The average number of people online in real time reached 30 million per minute, which was an unprecedented record. Thanks to Brother Guang for the game's promotion this time. In the group, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent a grinning emoji to express his gratitude to Daoist Guang. Brother Grenade-throwing, what are you saying? It was just a small effort. But this game is really interesting. I tried it out in the live stream room just now and saw that the number of pre-orders for the game has already broken 1 million, and this is just for a single platform. Looking at all the gaming platforms, it definitely won't be difficult for it to break through 10 million in the next few days. Daoist Guang smiled. It just so happens that the popularity of PUBG has dropped recently, and I've been worrying about not having a game to play. With the release of Cultivation Emulator, perhaps it'll create a wave. There were many factors that contributed to a game's popularity, and Cultivation Emulator's success was due to its creativity. Of course, another big reason was that it was now the summer vacation, and most of the students had nothing to do at home. In the class group, Super Chen was extremely excited. He and Dopey Guo were fanatics when it came to games to begin with. Although Cultivation Emulator didn't have a trailer, Daoist Guang's demo video had been recorded by the Light Chasers and uploaded to major video websites. This kind of publicity was already no less effective than a game trailer PV. This game is pretty good. Super Chin sent several excited emojis in the group. I was so bored that I started playing DNF. In the end, after weapon strengthening failed, all my hopes turned to dust. Weapon strengthening, how much did it cost? Dopey Guo couldn't help asking. I spent more than 10,000 a week on it. I even used up a tenth of my New Year's money from last year. Seeing this, Wang Ling couldn't help pursing his lips. Why were all his classmates so rich? Saying this, Super Chin sighed. But I have a feeling that this Cultivation Emulator will definitely explode in popularity. In front of the screen, when Wang Ling saw Super Chen's words, he instantly knew that the game was in the bag. Super Chin, but it's so annoying. He had sent out too few private beta accounts. I tried to grab them before, but they were gone before the browser even popped up. Dopey, do you have any uncles who work in a game company? Think of a way to get 2 accounts. Dopey Guo, you don't say. I really do. Super Chin, Wang Ling, Dopey Guo, but the creator of this game isn't a company, but an independent creator. My uncle has already used his connections to ask the bosses of several game companies, and all of them said they didn't know this creator. Now, the only way is to buy back closed beta accounts at a high price, but I heard that the price has already reached tens of thousands, and it's only going to get higher and higher, ? Super Chen was amused. Don't tell me Wang Ling or his relatives made this game. Wang Ling, Super Chin, Wang Ling, I know you're looking at the screen, why don't you come out and say something? Wang Ling. Chapter 9-10. At the same time that night, on the Holy Pillar in the Demon World, second-generation Demon Saint, who was observing the crystal magic ball, felt the scales all over his body explode, and a bad premonition reached the depths of his soul. With a crack, the magic ball in second-generation Demon Saint's hand suddenly shattered. The demon saint magical bead actually cracked. This is a great omen. On the side, Sage Master Shenhuiyue also revealed an extremely astonished expression. As a Sage Master who had assisted generations of demon saints, Shenhuiyue naturally knew very well what the destruction of the magical pillar meant. As early as the first demon saint, the magic bead had cracked once, but it was only a very small crack. The next day, the first demon saint got hemorrhoids, and when he came out of the toilet bowl was filled with the first demon saint's blood. The closest time the orb broke was when the mysterious expert who used the fishing line to connect the kuan and used it to probe the different spaces appeared. Back then, the identity of the angler was very mysterious, but now, the identity of the angler was clear. It was Wang Zhen from the domain of the gods. This time, the cracks on the magic bead were even more thorough. It actually split into 8 pieces like a watermelon. This. Old Shin, what is going on? Second generation demon saint was a little flustered. He had never seen such a situation before, and fine beads of sweat instantly trickled down his forehead. Shenhuiyue stared at the shattered magic ball in silence for a while. To be honest, he'd never seen a situation like this before. Now, he could only rely on the handbook first-generation demon saint had left behind to judge the situation. Shenhuiyue hurriedly flipped through the demon saint codex from beginning to end. Second-generation demon saint watched on the side, clearly a little anxious from waiting. Second-generation demon saint, what's the situation? Shenhuiyue muttered to himself for a while and said, the pearl has 8 petals, the chrysanthemum is broken. Second-generation demon saint. For a moment, the palace at the top of the holy pillar fell into a long silence. Regardless of whether the chrysanthemum stain was real or not, what was certain now was that this was definitely a print. As long as you can't run away. If it's a broken chrysanthemum, there's nothing to be afraid of. Second-generation demon saint laughed. My lower body is a fishtail, and I don't have a chrysanthemum at all. Shenhuiyue frowned. But Lord Demon Saint must pay attention to this matter. Since ancient times, the shattering of magic beads had never been a good thing. Because the previous demon sages didn't pay enough attention to this matter, they all suffered a great calamity in the end. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a violent tremor came from the sacred demon temple. A crack appeared in the void, like a spider web. A powerful aura could be felt. Both second-generation demon saint and Shenhuiyue were familiar with this scene. They thought of the multi-fanged kuan that had appeared in the palace before. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. Shenhuiyue kicked second-generation demon saint aside and stood in front of him. Second-generation demon saint spat out a mouthful of blood with a pft. At this moment, a crack appeared in the void, and a 3-headed, 9-tailed firebird flew out, Phoenix. Second-generation demon saint took a closer look. Shenhuiyue shook his head. This firebird had fine teeth in its mouth, accompanied by the 7-colored 9-tailed phoenix plume. This is the primordial 3-headed phoenix. It's another extinct divine beast. Second-generation demon saint was stupefied. He had never expected that his palace would have a constitution that could attract divine beasts. Rua. Before the two of them could react, this 3-headed phoenix that had appeared out of nowhere directly opened its mouth and spewed raging fire. Rainbow divine fire. Shenhuiyue was so frightened that his hair stood on end. He kicked Demon Saint away again. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. Second-generation Demon Saint was sent flying into the distance and spat out a mouthful of blood. His sternum was already broken after the second flying kick. How dare you, evil creature! Having already dealt with the primordial vicious kuan, Shenhuiyue was completely fearless in the face of the 3-headed phoenix this time. He removed his antlers and threw them forward. At that moment, the antlers, which were spinning at high speed, turned into 2 boomerangs with powerful cutting power and slashed at the phoenix like chainsaws. Shenhuiyue controlled his mental power to the extreme as he manipulated the antlers on his head. These antlers were a life-bonded magic weapon that his clan had refined and were impervious to water and fire. But since his opponent was the three-headed phoenix, Shenhuiyue still felt a little uneasy. This was Rainbow Divine Fire. Rumor had it that it was a powerful divine fire born from the combination of the Yang Heart Divine Fire in the sun's core and the power of the three-headed phoenix clan's phoenix. Once tainted by it, it wouldn't stop until one died, and wouldn't be extinguished by any external factors until the object was completely burned out. But why is the three-headed phoenix here? Shenhuiyue couldn't figure it out no matter how he racked his brains. The three-headed phoenix this time and the primordial vicious Kuan last time had both appeared so suddenly that it could be described as baffling. Their Demon Saint Palace was about to become a rare animal protection center. Shenhuiyue, this fire phoenix, at that moment, second-generation Demon Saint, who had been kicked twice, came to his senses and slowly got up from the ground. He wanted to ask about the three-headed phoenix, but the situation was urgent and Shenhuiyue was in no mood to pay attention to Demon Saint. The three-headed phoenix let out a long cry and swooped down. The sound of the phoenix swept through the air with an intimidating volume. The antler boomerangs were directly shaken off their original tracks. Lord Demon Saint, be careful. The phoenix's sound can captivate one's soul. You need to seal your ear orifices. Shenhuiyue roared. But it seemed that second-generation Demon Saint had already fallen for it. Holding his head, he swayed left and right and his steps were unsteady, as if he was performing the famous comedy skit, High Wise Dead, performed by a certain female star. Lord Demon Saint. Seeing this, Shenhuiyue kicked him a third time. The current situation was critical, and using magic to dispel it would waste time. On the contrary, physical correction would have a miraculous effect. Suffering this third kick, second-generation Demon Saint coughed up another mouthful of blood. This was the largest mouthful of blood he had ever coughed up, and it was horrifying like a fountain. But after this third kick, Shenhuiyue realized that he couldn't drag this battle out any longer. He had to end it quickly. If this went on, Lord Demon Saint would be at his limit before the three-headed phoenix was dealt with. This trash Demon Saint, he was clearly the one fighting, but in the end, he was the one who was coughing up the most blood. Forget it, Shenhuiyue sighed in disappointment. He stared at the three-headed fire phoenix in front of him, and his expression finally turned serious. Shenhuiyue rarely revealed his true form, but at this moment, the arrow was knocked on the bowstring, and he had no choice but to release it. Demon Saint's palace had now become the #1 target for foreign invaders. Where was the dignity of his majestic Demon Saint palace? It didn't matter whether there was someone behind this who wanted to deal with Demon Saint's holy palace, whether it was intentional or not. But as the sage master who had assisted first-generation Demon Saint until now, Shenhuiyue felt that he had to step forward. The demon world wasn't devoid of people. And Lord Demon Saint. And he, Shenhuiyue. For this reason, Shenhuiyue directly swallowed the antler that he had removed earlier to use as a boomerang. The aura of a giant prehistoric beast descended, and the three-headed phoenix was so frightened that it actually dropped a few of its feathers. Chapter 9-11. Old Shenhuiyue, second-generation Demon Saint, clutched his chest. His chi and blood had been in turmoil from those kicks, and he had almost died. But at that moment, the bursting aura in the field made second-generation Demon Saint's fish tail tremble slightly. The scene in front of him actually caused his eyes to sink into a long trance. This was the first time second-generation Demon Saint had seen Shenhuiyue in his beast form. Apart from the word beautiful, second-generation Demon Saint actually didn't know what else to use to describe the scene in front of him. Shenhuiyue had grown taller, even the wrinkles on his face had disappeared, and he looked nothing like his doddering old self from before. He had become incomparably handsome. His flowing silver-white hair fell to Shenhuiyue's ankles, and from his shoulders to his collarbone, there were patches of dark green scales. There was a red mark embedded in the center of his forehead like a gem, indicating Shen Wuye's current identity. Realization suddenly dawned on second-generation Demon Saint. No wonder Shen Wuye had been unwilling to reveal his beast form in front of everyone. Shen Wuye was the descendant of a deer qilin, a hybrid of a primordial divine deer and a primordial qilin. Since ancient times, hybrid divine beasts had never fared well with either family, and the divine beast tribes would regard them as heretics, a species that shouldn't exist. But it was an indisputable fact that divine beasts often had very powerful combat strength. But divine beasts had gone extinct a long time ago. Second-generation Demon Saint had thought that Shen Wuye was just a rare deer divine beast, and had never thought that he would actually be a deer qilin. Naturally, in this deer qilin form, Shen Wuye's personality and combat strength would change, and even his personality would change. This was also one of the main reasons why Shen Wuye had always been unwilling to reveal his true form. He gazed at second-generation Demon Saint. Without that old look, Shen Wuye's gaze in this form actually seemed a little tender and affectionate, and second-generation Demon Saint's heart rippled like a spring breeze. Oh no, this was, second-generation Demon Saint's old face turned red. He was actually flushed from being stared at by his own sage master. The point was that he clearly knew that Shen Wuye was a man. Not counting your batch, I've led 2 batches of Demon Saints. Judging from your aura, you seem to be the weakest batch, Shen Wuye said leisurely, and even his voice sounded very pleasant. Second-generation Demon Saint, Shen Wuye, a mere 3-headed phoenix actually managed to injure you to this extent. Demon Saint's lips twitched at these words. Why was he injured to this extent? Shen Wuye, why? After saying that, Shen Wuye raised his head to look at the horizon. The 3-headed phoenix in the sky had been observing him since the beginning. It had been quite intimidated by Shen Wuye's aura after deer qilin transformation, and even a few of its feathers had fallen off. Shen Wuye, Demon Generation Wuye said. The 3-headed Phoenix clan, Shen, It and Phoenix, Saint, and Wuing Shen, Phoenix, Saint, Dragon, and a formless wave of spiritual energy followed Shen Wuye's movement and grabbed towards the 3-headed Phoenix. The 3-headed Phoenix screeched in fright and spewed out rainbow-colored divine flames from its mouth, but Shen Wuye faced the flames fearlessly. Shen armor, that qilin the armor was, Yang, Lu Shen of Lu of Demon, which Shen spirit Lu had Lu God. The rainbow divine fire roasted Shen Wuye's palm and the back of his hand, but it actually didn't bring him any pain at all. The spiritual energy in Shen Wuye's palm was as vast as the ocean, and it firmly imprisoned the 3-headed phoenix like a birdcage. It was very much like how Tathagata had imprisoned the 9-headed golden condor in the past. No matter how the 3-headed phoenix struggled, it was useless, and it was directly caught firmly in Shen Wuye's palm. I was wondering what kind of powerful beast it was. This 3-headed phoenix is only so-so. Shen Wuye grabbed the 3-headed phoenix and played with it in his hands, folding its wings again and again, and even twisting its 3 heads together like a fried dough twist, as if he was playing with 1,000 paper cranes. That 3-headed phoenix was completely autistic, allowing Shen Wuye to do whatever he wanted. It dared to be angry but didn't dare to say anything. He single-handedly captured the 3-headed phoenix. This was too strong. Behind them, second-generation Demon Saint was flabbergasted. He'd never thought that the difference between Shen Wuye before and after transformation would actually be so great. Even the horse monkey Soju was no better than this. An adult 3-headed phoenix might be a little stronger, but this one is still underage and can't even speak. It's boring. After playing with it for a while, Shen Wuye felt bored, so he put the 3-headed phoenix on his shoulder. The 3-headed phoenix didn't even dare to move. Second-generation Demon Saint was extremely excited. Old Shen, want to praise me? Or are you going to give me a bonus? Shin Wuyue smiled. Old Shin, your gender, I'm a man. And right now, I'm my second personality. Although my appearance has changed a lot, I'm still wearing one. Oh, second-generation demon saint sighed inwardly and couldn't help looking disappointed. I'll have to maintain this form for a while until the antlers that were eaten grow back. Shin Wuyue pursed his lips. It's all because Shin Yue is too stubborn. In fact, if he really runs into a situation where he can't win, there's no harm in calling me out. In any case, once the antlers grow back, the personality will switch back. Shin Yue. That's what I call his first personality. He also calls me Yu. You can call me that too. Shin Yue narrowed his eyes and curled the corners of his lips into a brilliant smile. This was the first time second-generation demon saint realized that even a man could have such a beautiful smile. Speaking of his experience as second-generation demon saint, it was purely because he had been tricked by first-generation demon saint back then. If first-generation demon saint hadn't deliberately scared him and made him pee under the holy pillar wouldn't have forced him to become second-generation demon saint. What was the most painful thing about being demon saint? For second-generation demon saint, the most painful thing wasn't managing and maintaining order in the entire demon world, it was the lack of freedom. His range of activity was restricted by the holy pillar. Before he found the next demon saint, he could only stay in demon saint's palace above the holy pillar for the rest of his life. Thus, second-generation demon saint had originally been very resentful of being demon saint. Not only did he have no freedom, the only person who accompanied him was that boring and stubborn old man, Shin Wuyue, who always liked to undermine him in front of outsiders. But now, second-generation demon saint suddenly realized, even if he stayed in demon saint's palace for the rest of his life, it didn't seem too bad. At the very least, the transformed Shin Yue was a pleasing boy, it was a pity. He wasn't a girl. But at the very least, he was much better than that boring Shin Yue. Where did this three-headed phoenix come from? Second-generation demon saint asked. Shin Wuyue turned his gaze to the three-headed phoenix on his shoulder. This little fellow had already been completely tamed. The little fellow chirped a few times. Although it didn't speak human language, Shin Yue still understood it. It says it's from outside the domain of the gods. Domain of the gods. Second-generation demon saint turned pale with fright. Chapter 9:12. Because of Wang Zhen's descent, everyone already knew about the domain of the gods. But now, before they could figure it out, a domain of the gods outside the domain of the gods had suddenly popped up. What kind of place was this? Both Demon Saint and Shinryu were very curious. Should we report this to the Office of Strategic Deception? Second-generation Demon Saint asked. The Office of Strategic Deception is currently our demon world's biggest partner. You can make the decision yourself, there's no need to ask me for advice. Shinryu said indifferently, but for this domain of the gods outside the domain of the gods to be able to rear a three-headed phoenix, the strength of the people inside is definitely not simple. Also, look. Speaking up to this point, Shinryu pressed his fingers against the neck of the three-headed phoenix's middle head, and actually pulled out a thin thread. Second-generation Demon Saint felt that this scene was a little familiar. This thread is made of a very special material, but what's certain is that this three-headed phoenix is being manipulated. This thread is a little stronger than the one Wang Zhen used, and it acts as a puppet. No matter what it is, as long as it's connected to this puppet thread, it can be manipulated from behind the scenes. Seeing this, second-generation Demon Saint's eyes darkened. He sensed that the winds and clouds in this world, perhaps the winds and clouds in this universe were about to be blown into ripples. It was Wednesday, August 30th, the 17th day of the summer break. In the last 2 days, Miss Bai Chiao's creative new game cultivation emulator had been everywhere, whether it was on the school's chiba, the class group or the hot headlines on various major platforms. The game's popularity exceeded everyone's expectations. It hadn't even been officially released to the public yet, but the number of pre-orders had broken 10 million in 2 days. This was something no one could have imagined. Thus, the Office of Strategic Deception set up a game group, with Miss Bai Chiao as the group leader. This was a show of goodwill, a way to rope her in, and even more to stabilize this Miss Bai Chiao's heart. After joining the sect, they would be one family. And most importantly, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal offered Miss Bai Chiao a high salary that she couldn't refuse, so that she wouldn't have to ask her cheap father, Boss Jean, for money to buy games. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found someone to finish building the game group's hall on the same day, and hung a game group sign on the door. But the truth was that the game group's interior was more like an internet cafe. When other people in the Office of Strategic Deception wanted to relax and have fun, they could directly enter with the Sect Jade Talisman. Sect disciples had free internet access. Moreover, they could also enjoy unlimited refreshments and tea services in the internet cafe according to their class levels. All the computers in the gaming group's internet cafe were of the highest grade. If visitors from other sects wanted to enter the internet cafe, they would have to pay 50 immortal gold per hour. It could be said that the Office of Strategic Deception's plan was already in full swing. The hot sales of Heavenly Dao Broccoli and the development of the Cultivation Emulator game had now become an important source of income for the Office of Strategic Deception. That day, several Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples who had gone to the Office of Strategic Deception to buy broccoli passed by the game team's internet cafe. However, when they entered, they were shocked by the high prices of the internet cafe. So expensive. The Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciple shrunk his neck. 50 immortal gold per hour, 5 immortal gold per sausage. Why is your grilled sausage so expensive? The Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciple questioned the little brother at the front desk with his head lowered. If you want to buy it, then buy it. If you don't, then just watch. This little brother was none other than sect leader Su Xing, who had been present at the Office of Strategic Deception's opening ceremony back then. For a previous review, see Chapter 817 One-Man Sect Leader. At the opening ceremony last time, Su Xing had used his palm techniques to win a match and obtained a first-class holy weapon as a reward. But to date, apart from Su Xing, sect leader no longer had any other disciples, and even the sect's business license had expired several years ago. Later, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had made Su Xing stay at the Office of Strategic Deception. Furthermore, Su Xing was someone who could subconsciously comprehend Heavenly Dao, which was a great help to the study of Heavenly Dao. Now, Su Xing was already part of the Goon team, and his direct superior was Fang Xing. The gaming group had just been set up, and Miss Bai Chiao was busy playing games, so Fang Xing sent Su Xing to the gaming group to look after the internet cafe. No matter what the occasion was, there had to be someone to keep watch. Su Xing had shown off his skills at the sect celebration last time, and had been covered by numerous media outlets. Although the sect leader wasn't a high-level sect, a lot of people had already recognized Su Xing after his appearance last time. When they raised their heads now, the two Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples had stunned expressions on their faces. Why is it you, Brother Su? One of the Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples, who looked like the senior brother, reacted quickly and immediately laughed out loud. The ingredients in this sausage are Heavenly Dao broccoli, Heavenly Dao crispy noodle snacks and hand-picked dragon pig meat. One sausage costs 5 immortal gold, and it's definitely a fair deal. Don't talk nonsense when you go out. Su Xing chuckled as he stared at the two of them. He rubbed his palms together as if he was sharpening a knife, and when his palms met, they actually made the crisp sound of godly metal colliding, and the two disciples couldn't help swallowing. This wasn't because they were salivating from the aroma of the sausage, but purely because they were frightened by Su Xing. During the sect celebration, the video of Su Xing's palm had been broadcasted to all the major platforms, so the two disciples naturally knew how powerful Su Xing's palm technique was. 5 immortal gold. Worth it. I'll buy it. Thus, the senior brother decided to give them face. He took out a gold note from his wallet, which could be directly exchanged for immortal gold, and had a different denomination from ordinary coins. There were denominations of 50, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. The senior brother took out a 50 immortal gold note, which made Su Xing laugh. How many do you want, little brother? The man weakly raised a finger. One finger. What's wrong with you, little brother? You're not buying one for your junior brother. 2 sticks then, let me confirm, 2 10 immortal gold bars. And, there's a discount when applying for a membership card now, top up 500 and get 500 free. The membership price is only 3 immortal gold for 1 sausage. Do you want to do it? What's wrong with you, little brother? The salary of Immortal Palm Tree Sect should be quite high, right? Can't even afford 500 immortal gold bars? Or are you not giving me face? I'll do it. The Immortal Palm Tree Sect brother gritted his teeth and decided to go all out. We have bronze members here, top up 500 and get 500 free. Gold members top up 1,000 and get 1,000 free. Diamond members top up 10,000 and get 10,000 free. What kind do you want? Is there a difference? The bronze sausage membership price is 3 immortal gold bars, the gold membership price is 2 immortal gold bars, and the diamond membership price is 1 immortal gold bar. We'll also give you 1 free every day after you log in. P.S. Put up a flag that probably no one will see. Before the first day of the new year, if this chapter says it breaks 150, I'll prepare for 10 chapters to explode during the new year. Chapter 9:13. The 2 Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples were now extremely regretting coming to this internet cafe. This was too much. But they had to give Su Xing face. Everyone knew that after the last sect celebration, Su Xing and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had become very close. Who was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal? On the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception, even the 10 generals gave them face. Furthermore, the Office of Strategic Deception was currently the only light force that directly cooperated with Huaxiao Alliance. Therefore, it was very important to be happy. On the day of the sect celebration, Immortal Palm Tree Sect hadn't sent a representative. The sect leader of Immortal Palm Tree Sect was now full of regret, so he signed a large order with the Office of Strategic Deception on the day the Heavenly Dao broccoli went on sale. On one hand, it was an apology. On the other hand, it was a show of sincerity for future cooperation. As for Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples, there was no need to even mention them. There was now a clear rule in Immortal Palm Tree Sect that disciples must vigorously support all of the Office of Strategic Deception's businesses. Actually, just this alone was enough to make the 2 disciples unable to shirk the responsibility. They couldn't let anyone catch them. I'll get a gold one. After making up his mind, eldest senior brother gritted his teeth and took out a few gold notes from his wallet. Su Xing glanced at the junior brother beside him and found that this junior brother was secretly laughing with a gloating expression. He hurriedly said, "Since you've already decided to apply for a gold membership, why don't you add another 500 and charge 1,500? You can upgrade it to a combo package. 1 card can be used by 2 people. Take care of your junior brother. But the extra 500 will have to be paid by your junior martial brother." The junior brother's expression instantly turned ashen. He couldn't refuse, so he took out 500 gold notes and made a combination card with his senior brother. On the other side, Su Xing happily accepted the money. Just as he was entering the customer information, he suddenly remembered and looked at the 2 of them. "Ah, right. Do you want to add another 500? Our internet cafe has just opened for business, and there is a redemption service. Another 500 immortal gold can be exchanged for a crispy noodle snack packet. Don't, we don't have money. The two immortal palm tree sect brothers were about to cry. Su Xing smiled. Don't regret it. Actually, it wasn't that they didn't have the money, but they felt that the exchange wasn't worth it. 500 immortal gold for a bag of snacks, only a fool would do that. 10 minutes later, the pair from Immortal Palm Tree Sect left with their gold membership cards for the Office of Strategic Deception's Internet Cafe, both of them with despairing expressions on their faces. Su Xing leaned his elbow against the door as he watched the two fools leave. It was still Wednesday, August 30th. Not long after the two Immortal Palm Tree Sect disciples left, a van with the logo of the General Administration of 100 Schools drove directly to the entrance of the Office of Strategic Deception. A group of people got out of the car: Wang Ling, Super Chin, Hero Gua and Little Peanut. Number 60 High's Grade 1, Class 3 squad had assembled. In the car, Super Chin had already been jabbering away for a long time. He couldn't believe that he had actually received an invitation from the Office of Strategic Deception. Last night, he had clearly been complaining that he hadn't gotten a beta number for Cultivation Emulator, but the next day, they had sent him an invitation. The invitation was signed by Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and stamped with a gold stamp. They were invited to visit the Office of Strategic Deception's newly built Internet Cafe, along with a set of tickets for each hall and a gift bag for the internal beta test. Fang Xing got out of the car in the front passenger seat and smiled. Don't celebrate too early, we're only allowed to visit today. We're underage, so be content that Senior Ajua entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to send us an invitation. So we're really only allowed to visit. Dopey Gua and Super Chin were a little disappointed. It's good to have a gift bag for the internal beta test. In any case, we can take it back to play. Little Peanut grinned. As commissary in charge of studies, under Dopey Gua and Super Chen's lead, he had already completely embarked on a path of no return. I told you, Wang Ling is a mascot. Super Chen rubbed his head, still a little amazed. But why did Senior Ajua suddenly invite us? Did you forget that Wang Ling borrowed Senior Zhua's spirit sword at the spirit sword exchange meet? Senior Ajua is expressing his gratitude, Fang Xing replied. Fang Xing and Ajua had already colluded last night to come up with this excuse. I told you, Wang Ling is a mascot. Hearing this, Super Chen didn't doubt it, and directly laughed heartily. Otherwise, I would have thought that classmate Wang Ling had opened the Office of Strategic Deception. Fang Xing, Wang Ling, as Fang Xing had said, they were only here to visit the Internet Cafe this time. The Office of Strategic Deception's Internet Cafe was a regular Internet Cafe, so it naturally had to look like one. They couldn't even go through the back door. Holy shit! As soon as they entered the Internet Cafe, Super Chin was immediately startled by the scene in front of him. He felt that this couldn't be considered an Internet Cafe at all. It was simply built like a palace, and all the computers were holographic pods. As long as you lay down and put on a helmet, you could directly connect to the internet. You could do whatever you wanted. Even if you played for a long time, you wouldn't feel tired. Once you entered the holographic pods, you felt like you were in a dream, and your body was completely relaxed. Furthermore, the holographic game pods that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had bought were very advanced and came with a massage function. Fang Xing had already informed Su Xing before they came, and as he showed them around, he introduced them to all kinds of information about the Internet Cafe. These holographic game pods are also the latest model, and there's also an excretion device at the bottom. If you want to go to the bathroom midway, you can directly turn on the toilet mode. When that happens, the holographic pod will directly turn into a closed-off toilet. Su Xing said, "Do you see that button with the word poop drawn on it? That's the toilet mode button. What's that? At that moment, Dopiguo pointed to the button below the toilet mode button, which looked like two fish balls strung together. This is the bouncing egg mode. Considering that some customers might be so happy in our holographic pods that they forget their duties, we added this mode. Its main function is to moisten the intestines and ease the bowel movement. Everyone knows that lying down or sitting down for too long can easily lead to constipation. Your service is really thorough. Dopiguo sighed. All the excrement will eventually be collected in the wastewater tank, and after special treatment, it will be turned into fertilizer for the Heavenly Tao broccoli breeding shed. The internet cafe just opened today, and there are already a lot of nascent soul and soul formation customers. Their fertilizer is actually quite hard to come by. During the introduction, Su Xing kept glancing at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye every now and then. Except for Super Chin, Dopiguo and Little Peanut, everyone here was well aware of Wang Ling's identity. Chapter 9:14. There wasn't a single core member of the Office of Strategic Deception who didn't know Wang Ling's identity, a reclusive big shot who pretended to be a 16-year-old high school student. It wasn't just Wang Ling, everyone in the Wang family's small villa was also a big shot. This was all thanks to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's brain and internal propaganda. It turned out that sometimes it wasn't bad to have friends who could make up stories, since they could actually save a lot of explaining. In any case, these people were all core members and grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's confidants. Their mouths were trustworthy, and they wouldn't take the initiative to spill the beans. Wang Ling knew that his reclusive big shot hat couldn't be removed from these people's minds. Even if they knew he was still in high school, they would still feel that this was an Almighty's bad taste. In many people's eyes, the reason why Almighties could become Almighties was because they more or less had some eccentricities. It was a good thing to cultivate steadily, and the truth of having one's feet on the ground would never change. However, people with eccentricities often had very strong egos. Generally speaking, in the cultivation world, it was easier for people with their own personalities and independent styles to succeed. This might sound like fallacious reasoning, but it was in fact true. Wang Ling himself also felt that he had some eccentricities, such as his penchant for peeping, his passion for crispy noodle snacks, and his love for studying. Father and Mother Wang had probably instilled in him from a young age that studying was always a good thing. After all, he was only 16 years old, and his experience was far from that of those old seniors who had lived through the millennia and witnessed the country's rise to prosperity and power step by step. But while Wang Ling loved to study, there were times when he also liked to goof off. Otherwise, he wouldn't have enchanted the monster pen and goblin eraser to do his homework for him. In order to keep his grades down in exams, Wang Ling usually studied ahead of time. He could do all the homework himself, sometimes he just didn't feel like it and was too lazy to do it. Of course, most of the time, Wang Ling didn't do his homework because he was in the mood, but purely for the limited edition crispy noodle snacks. His homework couldn't be sold for much money. Sometimes, as soon as he brought it to school, Super Chin and Hero Guo would run over and start copying it with the godly skill of the flow of multiple pens. It was said that during the busiest time in the third year of high school, the seniors in the third year of high school, they were all top students, began to charge fees to help others complete their homework in order to save up for their tuition fees. They could even imitate people's handwriting to be exactly the same. This had already developed this industry to a commercial value. In Wang Ling's opinion, copying homework wasn't good, and was harmful to oneself. Helping someone else with their homework for a fee was even worse. It wasn't helping them, but harming them. Wang Ling had never felt that his homework was valuable, but it couldn't stop his homework from selling like hotcakes over at the Heavenly Tao. The equivalent exchange that the Heavenly Axiom had conducted over the past few years was not as valuable as his homework. Wang Ling noticed that from the moment he entered the Office of Strategic Deception's territory, he had been the focus of all kinds of staff members. After entering the internet cafe, Su Xing kept peeping at her. Actually, Wang Ling didn't really care. Too many things had happened in the first half of high school, which had actually made him feel a lot more at ease. He no longer felt uncomfortable all over when someone glanced at him for the slightest bit. Let them look. You're just looking because you're good looking. That's why they look at you. Thinking this way, Wang Ling felt a lot more at ease. Besides, he had used the great face-shaping spell to make slight adjustments to his appearance, and had deliberately made himself ugly. Actually, it wasn't all that good-looking. Even when Wang Ling himself looked in the mirror, he felt that his face was mediocre. Compared with those fresh meat on TV with fair and tender faces, high noses, straight eyebrows and oval faces, he was still a long way off. In terms of looks, Wang Ling felt that he couldn't compare to even a tenth or two of immortal Toya. He was just a high school student who was pleasing to the eye. But Wang Ling hadn't expected Fang Xing to actually be a little unhappy that Su Xing kept looking at him. In the Office of Strategic Deception, Fang Xing was now Su Xing's immediate superior. Thus, when Su Xing looked at Wang Ling out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. It was as if he was looking at a cobra standing on its hind legs and staring at him, and cold sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. Su Xing had already heard that this Ling Jinren was the Office of Strategic Deception's group favorite, and that everyone treasured him to no end. But this was a little too exquisite, and Wang Ling had only taken a few glances. As a newcomer, Su Xing naturally didn't dare offend his superior. He smiled foolishly and withdrew his gaze. Then, he brought them to a small room. This was the reception room in the game group's internet cafe. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had prepared the machines in advance, and there were exactly 5 game machines in holographic pods. The 3 friends from number 60 high were instantly pleasantly surprised. This, Fang Xing smiled. You're not old enough to go online in an internet cafe, but this is the reception room. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Chief of the Office of Strategic Deception, specially prepared these machines here and invited us to experience them. He sent me the physical verification, but didn't tell you before because he wanted to give you a surprise. Actually, this was a form of preferential treatment. Super Chen and Dopey Guo were extremely excited. They had never sat in such high-end game pods before, and it was actually unrealistic to buy one. It wasn't that they couldn't afford it. It was just that it was a little awkward at this stage in high school. It was inevitable that their parents would be angry with such a big machine at home. When all was said and done, the college entrance examination hadn't started yet, so it wasn't appropriate for them to engage in this kind of extreme entertainment. One by one, they sat down in the holographic game pods. The soft sofa and comfortable cushions made them feel as if they were in a land of gentleness. This was too comfortable. It was like cotton everywhere. After lying down, they felt as if they had sunk into water, and their bodies were as light as a feather. Even if they didn't play games, it was very comfortable to lie down here and sleep. Damn! I'm definitely going to buy one in my lifetime. I'll buy it once I get into university. I'll buy it even if I have to spend all my money. Super Chen was excited. Quit your games first. I reckon that you'll be able to save enough money for one by the time you get into university. Dopey Guo chuckled. In fact, it wasn't impossible as long as they saved money on weapon enhancement scrolls. A top-of-the-line holographic pod wasn't expensive, it was only 1.6 million yuan. Little Peanut lay in the holographic pod and prayed. His family was a Buddhist, and he put his palms together in a Buddhist salute as if he were praying. My parents said that life would be easy after I get into university. Although he was lying in the pod now, Little Peanut still felt a little guilty, which was probably what all well-behaved children who were about to be led astray felt at this time. As the well-behaved child of the family and the class commissary in charge of studies, Little Peanut didn't even use a smartphone at home, let alone play games. It was only when Little Peanut's parents had seen Audio's invitation that they had agreed to let him go for a study assignment that they had agreed to let him go. Seeing that everyone was lying in the game pods, Su Xing smiled and said, "Everyone, get ready. Please lie down in your most comfortable positions, and I'll turn them on." He had an administrator remote control in his hand. After he pressed the button, the doors of the 5 holographic game pods closed. Whether it was Su Xing, Fang Xing or Wang Ling, none of them had expected this simple experience to actually cause trouble. Chapter 9:15. The moment the cabin door closed, something happened that Su Xing did not expect. The remote control for closing the cabin door was separate from the remote control for turning on the cabin door. Su Xing did not even press the turn-on button, but the holographic game cabin actually started on its own. Su Xing frowned. He subconsciously sensed that something wasn't right, so he immediately took out the 2 remote controls and pressed the off button. In the end, they all failed. Was there something wrong with the machines? Su Xing yelled, "Pull the switch." For a moment, all the lights in the internet cafe disappeared. Several confused customers came out of the virtual cabins to ask what was going on. "I was having fun, why did the power go out? I'm only halfway through. Holy shit. Brother, you're awesome, you're in an internet cafe, and you're using a game cabin." The customers on the side were astonished. That's right. The only koi in the cultivation world is so good. And the author is so handsome. He doesn't even ask for monthly votes during the new year. There's actually an author who doesn't ask for monthly votes nowadays. Maybe it's because there aren't enough updates, so he's too embarrassed to ask for them. By the way, brother, what were you doing just now? I was reading The Chicken Soup written by the famous chicken soup master, teacher Mimi Meng Meng. Just as my soul was about to be healed, the power suddenly went out. Damn it. The current situation was that the internet cafe's power switch had already been completely pulled off. But Wang Ling and the other 4's machines were still running in front of Su Xing. Something had happened. Su Xing broke out in a cold sweat, but he didn't know who on earth the enemy in front of him was. Should I break it by force? Su Xing stared at the 5 machines in front of him. Then, he gritted his teeth and struck the game cabin with his palm. He couldn't care less now, saving people was the most important thing. His palm hit the door of the game cabin with great precision. But the moment his palm touched the cabin door, Su Xing's expression changed dramatically, because there was actually an invisible barrier above the cabin door that the naked eye couldn't see through. When was it set up? Su Xing's expression changed dramatically. The game cabins had just arrived this morning, and they had already been turned on to ensure that there were no problems before they had been placed here until Ling Jinren and his classmates arrived. During this time, no one had entered the room at all. Su Xing had been keeping watch outside the whole time, but hadn't noticed anyone suspicious. What he didn't expect was that the game capsule had been tampered with. However, before Su Xing figured out who did it, a powerful wave of spiritual energy came from the place where Su Xing had just punched the barrier. Damage backlash. Su Xing gritted his teeth and sent out another palm strike at the shockwave in an attempt to neutralize it. Su Xing's palm technique contained heavenly Tao, and its power was not weak. However, when his palm collided with the recoil of the psionic energy, Su Xing was thrown backward and vomited a large mouthful of blood. It was actually a backlash that doubled in power. Su Xing half knelt on the ground. His sternum had already been shattered, and even the walls of the room had collapsed. For a moment, the internet cafe became a mess. What's going on? Su Xing endured the pain and stood up. At that moment, he suddenly thought of someone. Miss Bai Qiao. The game pod in Miss Bai Qiao's office had also arrived in the morning. Given that the power switch had already been pulled, it was reasonable to say that Miss Bai Chiao should have already jumped out of the game pod in a thunderous rage and started swearing. But Miss Bai Chiao was nowhere to be seen. Had she been hit as well? Su Xing hurriedly notified grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. But to his surprise, as soon as he dialed the number, a space fisher appeared behind him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and a very pretty person, who couldn't be sure whether it was a boy or a girl, walked out of the fissure. However, this person's aura was inhuman, and had a very strong demon aura. It was Shen Wuyue, who was still in his second personality Shen Eryu state. Still a step too late. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. Shen Eryu looked at the injured Su Xing and helped him up. He took off the OK bandage on his head where the antlers had been broken off. In his amazement, Su Xing saw an arc of blood spurt out from the broken part with a "baiu" sound. Shen Eryu took out a disposable plastic cup that he always carried with him and skillfully filled it with blood, then put the OK bandage back on. Su Xing, he gave the cup of blood to Su Xing and said in a voice as soft as the cool moon, "You're badly injured. If you don't want any side effects, drink this cup of blood." This was the person whom grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had brought along, and it was clear that both of them had expected this. Although this strange person had demon aura, Su Xing didn't mind and drank the cup of blood in one gulp. Dear Qilin blood had a strong restorative ability, and was even stronger than Little Silver's blood. After drinking the cup, Su Xing was pleasantly surprised to find that all the pain in his body had been swept away. His broken bones had healed, and even his complexion was a lot better than before. Let me introduce you. This is Lord Shen Wuyue, the Holy Master who works for Demon Saint in the demon world. Seeing that Su Xing had recovered, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal introduced him. Holy Master of the demon world, the corners of Su Xing's mouth twitched. He felt that he had underestimated the office of strategic deception. It was actually connected to the top dog of the demon world. Suppressing his shock, Su Xing asked, "Senior Immortal, what on earth is going on?" The Holy Palace in the demon world detected fluctuations from outside the domain of the gods, and captured a three-headed phoenix from outside the domain of the gods, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied, the extinct three-headed phoenix was raised in captivity in the domain of the gods. Puppet strings were planted on its body and it launched an attack on the demon realm Holy Palace. In the end, it was suppressed and captured by Lord Shen Wuyue. Outer divine territory. Su Xing felt as if his worldview had been refreshed. In the past 2 days, Su Xing's understanding of the cultivation world was constantly being refreshed. He had previously thought that the 10 generals were already the symbol of the top big shots in the cultivation circle, but now he discovered that he was a frog at the bottom of a well. As he spoke, Shen Eryu inspected the barrier of the lower stage and then frowned deeply. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, how is it? Shen Eryu said, "This barrier is a power I've never seen before. It's not within the scope of my ability, but I can be sure that it's neither the heavenly Tao nor the heretic Tao. It should be a power that surpasses the other two. You should be able to sense it, right? You also possess the power of the heavenly Tao." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression was grave as he nodded. This indeed isn't heavenly Tao. Our opponent's realms are not on the same level as ours. Shen Eryu sighed. So, there's nothing we can do. We can only believe in Lord Ling's power. Apart from that, maybe we can ask Mr. Wang Zhen and the others for help. They're from the domain of the gods, and might have some understanding of this power, Shen Eryu said. Also, Chapter 9:16. What else? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked hurriedly. It was shameful to break a chapter. But if the author was very handsome, he believed that the readers would forgive him. I heard Senior Immortal mention that a keeper of order traveled through time and space to visit this place incognito. Shen Eryu said calmly. Brother Gu Xuanji. Grenade-throwing senior immortal patted his head. When he was anxious, he tended to forget things, and he had actually almost forgotten about this senior. He really shouldn't have done that. This was someone who maintained the order of the universe, and was also a figure appointed by the heavenly Tao. A keeper of order would indeed know more about such an inexplicable situation than an ordinary cultivator. But for some reason, grenade-throwing senior immortal felt a little uneasy. His eyebrows were tightly furrowed, and he had a bad feeling. After stepping into the unique realm of true venerated, his comprehension of the heavenly Tao had reached a new level. The game pod in front of him was covered in a special power that made him uneasy, a power that had nothing to do with the heavenly Tao at all. What on earth was this? Senior Gu, let me contact him. Grenade-throwing senior immortal dialed Gu Xuanji's number. After fighting Wang Ling, Gu Xuanji had wholeheartedly accepted Wang Ling's strength. He had always wanted Wang Ling's number, and in the end, it was Lord Ma who had given it to him. In the end, when Gu Xuanji called back, grenade-throwing senior immortal intercepted him. This was one of Wang Ling's group pet treatments. The Office of Strategic Deception would automatically be on guard against calls from strangers to protect Wang Ling's ears and world peace in passing. This month, the Office of Strategic Deception had already taken down a number of illegal small loan institutions and arrested more than 1,000 SMS scammers. Many of these scammers had been sending text messages at the same company, and had been uprooted on the spot when they were found. In addition, the Office of Strategic Deception had also caught a number of special scammers who sought connections with the rich, and had arrested tens of thousands of first emperors of Qin. After interrogation, there was still one who refused to admit defeat and insisted that he was the reincarnation of First Emperor Qin. After dialing Gu Xuanji's number, grenade-throwing senior immortal waited for a moment. On the other end of the line, Gu Xuanji's voice didn't come through. After a few seconds, grenade-throwing senior immortal suddenly heard an ear-piercing sound on the phone. Watch out! In the nick of time, Shen Eryu abruptly reached out to slap grenade-throwing senior immortal's phone away and kicked it out of the internet cafe. Boom! There was a loud noise. The phone exploded on the spot, forming a huge mushroom cloud outside the internet cafe. This, grenade-throwing senior immortal's heart was in turmoil, and the expression on his face didn't calm down for a very long time. Everything was too horrifying. If it wasn't for Shen Weiyue, if the phone had exploded next to his ear, he would have been severely injured even though he wouldn't have died due to his current realm. It was a surprise bomb attack. Fortunately, Shen Weiyue reacted quickly. As a legendary divine beast, Lu Lin's ability to sense danger was indeed extraordinary. Was this a warning? Grenade-throwing senior immortals sank into silence for a very long time. The opponents they faced this time were different from the ones they faced in the past. There were no clues at all. They did not make any preparations. In fact, he didn't even have the time to defend himself. The other party's attacks were like a manipulator behind the scenes in a game, manipulating everything as he pleased. What kind of enemy was this? They had no idea. How is it? Did the call go through? Shen Weiyue asked. This is a warning. Grenade-throwing senior immortal frowned deeply. I'm afraid Senior Gu is also in trouble. As it turned out, grenade-throwing senior immortal's hunch was correct. On the other side, Gu Xuanji was indeed in unprecedented trouble. Before the game cabin special energy had covered him, Gu Xuanji, who had been probing the flow of spatial spirit power far away in the outer city, had sensed it. Gu Xuanji sensed for a moment on the spot, but couldn't figure out the source of this special energy. What on earth is this? Gu Xuanji couldn't help muttering. Then he closed his eyes and connected his consciousness with the heavenly Tao space. Now that he had run into trouble, he could only ask the heavenly Tao little golden man to see if the six great heavenly Tao knew the source of this special energy. Gu Xuanji landed in the office of the heavenly Tao governing committee. It seemed that the six great heavenly Tao had already anticipated his arrival. "You're here," Strength Heavenly Tao said faintly. Although he couldn't see Strength Heavenly Tao's expression clearly, this voice was clearly different from usual, and sounded a little heavy. "What on earth happened?" As the Keeper of Order, Gu Xuanji asked. He had a vague bad feeling about this. He was appointed by the domain of the gods as the Keeper of Space Order, and yet he had no idea that something like this had happened. What a joke. Except for Strength Heavenly Tao, the other Heavenly Tao were silent. This made Gu Xuanji even more nervous. This was an unprecedented situation. After a long silence, Strength Heavenly Tao said, "Beyond the domain of the gods." Beyond the domain of the gods. Gu Xuanji was dumbfounded. His expression was the same as grenade-throwing senior immortals when he had heard this term. "You're the Keeper of Order, but there are also places that a Keeper of Order can't oversee," Strength Heavenly Tao murmured in a gloomy tone. Strength Heavenly Tao murmured in a dejected tone, "The universe we live in has no end. The primogenitor of Heavenly Tao once said that the essence of the universe is a nesting doll. One layer on top of the other. There's always a higher mountain." This was the first time Gu Xuanji, who had traveled the universe for so long, had heard of this saying. His eyes were full of shock. "You see the boulder, but not the mountain behind it. You see the river, but not the sea." Strength Heavenly Tao sighed. All the Heavenly Tao were silent, and the entire Heavenly Tao governing committee was lifeless, as if the end of the world had come. Lingjinren might have a way." Gu Xuanji's voice echoed in the space. Ever since his last fight with Wang Ling, he had become Wang Ling's fanboy. Gu Xuanji could vaguely guess Wang Ling's identity, but he didn't dare confirm it. In terms of strength, Gu Xuanji had to admit that they weren't on the same level. There was at least an entire dimension gap between him and Wang Ling. This was already something that couldn't be measured by the difference in realms. "It's too late, he's already been sucked in." At that moment, Strength Heavenly Tao raised his hand and waved it to project an image in the air. It was the scene of Wang Ling and the others being forcibly sealed in the game pods. "Gu Xuanji, how can this be, Strength Heavenly Tao? In another hour at most, the spirit chi in this world will be completely enveloped by this special energy. We don't know if we can survive this." The more Gu Xuanji thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. "But I'm from the future. Strength Heavenly Tao, haven't you noticed?" Gu Xuanji. Strength Heavenly Tao, your body is gradually disappearing. Gu Xuanji said, "No, I'm fine." Strength Heavenly Tao, the disappearance usually starts from the location where the yang qi is stored. Ah. Gu Xuanji unbuckled his belt and looked at his crotch. "No, it's still there." Strength Heavenly Tao, I'm talking about the golden core in the Dantian. Look at your own golden core. Are you still there? Gu Xuanji, elsewhere, Wang Ling and the others had arrived in a completely unfamiliar city. They landed on the top of a mountain. Looking into the distance, they could see the brightly lit city in the distance. This wasn't Earth, there wasn't even a trace of spiritual energy. "I can't cast spells anymore." Wang Ling used several rounds of ordinary spells in a row, but realized that he couldn't use them at all. There was no spirit chi in this world, and no spirit chi meant no spiritual power. Without spiritual power, spells could not be performed. Currently, the only spells Wang Ling could use were Heavenly Tao spells. The Heavenly Tao spells were powered purely by primordial chi. Furthermore, Wang Ling's situation was a little special. This primordial chi had been born naturally since he was a child, and could be produced in his body. Because he couldn't suppress this primordial chi, Wang Ling had drawn a talisman seal on himself not long after he was born. Wang Ling never thought that this primordial chi would actually come in handy here. On the cliff, Wang Ling felt the cold wind. Fang Xing, Super Chin, Hero Gua and Little Peanut were still unconscious. The moment the door to the game cabin had closed, they had instantly fallen in here. It was clear that this wasn't a game. Instead, it was a trap. They had been forced into another world. Hey, there's no point in standing here. Why don't we go investigate the situation? A familiar voice rang out, and someone appeared behind Wang Ling. It was Bai Qiao. Wang Ling knew that Bai Qiao had also come here. He had sensed her aura the moment they had landed. I went ahead to investigate just now. The people here are all strange looking, like an alien planet. Bai Qiao pursed her lips. It was clear that she also knew that this wasn't a game. She pressed down on the brim of her hat and crossed her arms. There was a hint of anger in her voice. I was halfway through my game when I suddenly fell here with you. If I find out who did this, I'll cut him into pieces. Wang Ling replied indifferently. He sat down cross-legged, then finally plucked one of his king's eyes out of its socket and tossed it into the sky. Wang Ling could vaguely sense a conspiracy here. It had happened so suddenly that he hadn't even sensed anything. Not even his eyelids had been alerted. Even his prophetic dreams hadn't happened before such a major event had taken place. This was enough to prove how strong his opponent was. At that moment, he had tossed out the king's eye in order to clearly see this world in its entirety. As Bai Qiao had said, this was a planet tens of thousands of times larger than Earth, and its inhabitants were all strange creatures. There were octopuses that looked like briquettes that sprayed transparent ink as they walked on the streets, cleaning up the streets like a sprinkler. There were creatures with jelly-like bodies that were soft as if they didn't have any bones. They walked on the streets with their pitch-black eyes wide open. There were also monsters with 2 legs that were almost humanoid. There were all kinds of monsters that looked like demons, but weren't, and devils, but weren't. But they had neither demon chi nor devil chi. This world doesn't have any spirit energy, but it has its own set of nomological laws. The energy these monsters use is also different from ours. At that moment, Fang Xing had also woken up. You're actually awake. Bai Qiao was a little surprised. I have a white transformation spell that doesn't require any spirit energy to activate. I went to check out the situation in the city just now, said Fang Xing, but the monsters here speak another language that I don't understand. Finally, the whole world doesn't speak Mandarin. Bai Qiao sneered, then stared at Super Chin and the others who were still lying on the ground and asked, what about these people? It won't be easy to do things with these 3 burdens. It's too much to say that they're burdens. These 3 are naturally useful. Fang Xing patted Super Chen's face and woke him up first. Super Chen felt that he had slept for a very long time. Rubbing his eyes, he opened them blearily. He turned pale with fright at the scene in front of him. Holy shit, where am I? You've already entered a game world, a game called Sim City. But since this is your first time connecting to the virtual game pod, your mind is a little unstable, which is normal. Fang Xing smiled and made up a lie with a straight face. Is that so? Why do I feel like you're lying to me? Don't tell me we've all fallen into another world. Super Chen rubbed his face to make himself more awake. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and Bai Qiao. At that moment, Super Chen noticed Bai Qiao on the side. Who is this girl? She's the boss of the Office of Strategic Deception's Internet Cafe. Her surname is Bai, Fang Xing said. Hello, Miss Bai. Super Chen was a little embarrassed and blushed. This is the first time I've seen a girl prettier than classmate Lotus Sun. It feels a little unreal. Miss Bai feels like a fairy from a painting, not a human. Bai Qiao pressed down on Fang Xing's shoulder with a resigned expression. I take back what I said just now. Fang Xing smiled back. You'll get used to it, then what's going on with us? Super Chin looked around, a little puzzled. This game is a little special, you can't use spirit energy. Furthermore, the boss is hidden, and the clues are in the city up ahead. Standing on the cliff and looking at the city up ahead, Fang Xing said, the game is set in an alien city, but it's a little unfortunate that it hasn't been completely Chinese, and the monsters all speak in an alien language. Super Chin rubbed his chin and nodded. Is there a time limit for clearing the game? 24 hours, Fang Xing replied. Although he knew it wasn't good to lie to them with such a straight face. But there was nothing he could do now. He had to calm the three of them down. Sometimes, white lies were necessary. After all, Super Chin, Hero Gua and Little Peanut were just high school students. If they knew the truth, they might not be able to withstand the pressure. This wasn't a game. They had fallen into an alien planet and another world. Furthermore, the person who had summoned them was still observing them in the dark. If they didn't handle it well, they might die, no props. Super Chin asked after thinking for a bit. No. Fang Xing shook his head. Then I think I know how to clear the game, Super Chin said. Have you played GTA 48 before? Fang Xing, yes, Super Chin, this game should be about the same as Crime City. Once we enter the city, we just need to cause a ruckus. In any case, we won't die, right? When we're done, we'll trigger the main plot and side plot, and we'll follow the clues to find the boss. Even if the boss is hiding, we won't be able to ignore it. No. We won't die. I'm relieved to hear that. Fang Xing nodded with a smile, his face full of gratitude. Wang Ling and Bai Qiao. Chapter 9:17. Bai Qiao suddenly realized that she was still a little too young. She had thought that she had already read the script, but compared with Super Chin, she felt that Super Chin was the one who had truly read the script. And she had only read the title page. When Hero Gua and Su Xiao woke up, Super Chin recounted the current situation to them. Games were the products that students were most willing to spend time, effort, and even money to achieve transcendence for their souls. Regardless of whether it was an online game or a single-player game, being able to become the number one player in a game was always the fun part. This game is so developed. It doesn't even give us a 98k when we land, and we have to rely on ourselves to discover the plot. Dopey Gua slapped his thigh. That's a little interesting. Super Chin analyzed the current situation. At the moment, we don't know the main plot, we don't have any supplies, and we don't even know the game language. I think that if we want to clear the game, we should be given language clearance at the very beginning. If we're speaking an alternate world's language, how are we going to clear the game? Language. Little Peanut muttered to himself. Then what should we do now? Let's go into the city and take a look. Maybe we can find the Easter egg that Dopey's uncle buried in the game, said Super Chin. Wang Ling was startled. Uncle. Wang Ling, you don't play games with us very much, of course you don't know about this. Super Chin laughed. Dopey has an uncle who does game programming. His uncle will secretly plant Easter eggs in all the games we play. Basically, all the games we play have Easter eggs in them. Wang Ling usually didn't believe in metaphysics, but Super Chen's blessed mouth had been proven countless times. Wang Ling withdrew his king's eye and got a general idea of the structure of this planet. This was a planet with only one city, and it wasn't hard to find the person at the helm. His portrait was publicly projected on almost all the conspicuous tall buildings. Contrary to Wang Ling's expectations, the person at the helm of this monster-filled planet was actually a humanoid creature, because he wasn't sure if the other party was human. Hey, are you really going to choose me as captain? Super Chen's face was full of question marks. Yes, you. Don't refuse. Fang Xing smiled. To be honest, Fong Xing had never felt this way before. He had never thought that there would actually be a day when he would feel a trace of peace in someone other than Wang Ling. Since the Heavenly Dao technique could be activated normally, it was easier for a group of people to sneak into the city than expected. Using the Great Transfiguration spell, Wang Ling changed everyone's appearance to that of the many monsters in the city. Super Chen turned into a muscular red giant with demon king horns on his head, looking very domineering. Heartwarming's illusory form was a big multicolored rooster. Wang Ling had designed this appearance based on the Furious Chicken's appearance, which he had been following for a while in the web series Furious Chicken Shangxi. Little Peanut's illusory form was a gourd man who looked like a peanut and carried 2 daggers on his back. Of course, this dagger was fake and could not be used normally. Fong Xing's illusory form was a tyrant flower, which Wang Ling had seen in the Encyclopedia of Plants. It was a hermaphrodite. Wang Ling's form was very simple. He turned himself into a raccoon. As for Bai Qiao, she hadn't transformed. She retracted her feet and became a specter. As a weapon spirit, this was the advantage of being able to Photoshop 2 feet off at any time. Number 60 High School's monster squad entered the city. The monster guards were lizard soldiers, but none of them noticed anything unusual. Because of the language barrier, after observing the streets for a while, Super Chen led everyone to the entrance of a bar. Super Chen couldn't read the words here, but he could recognize the bottles in the bar. Generally speaking, in this type of free game, there's usually a plot to trigger in a brothel. Super Chen explained to everyone at the entrance of the bar. Fong Xing nodded. Of course he believed what Super Chen said. If Super Chen said there definitely was. In an unfamiliar place and with a language barrier, everything seemed to come to a standstill. When everyone entered the bar, they realized that the bartender at the front desk was actually also a lizard. Another lizard man. Wang Ling and Fong Xing looked at each other. Although there were all kinds of strange monsters in this city, the lizard men occupied the main positions in the city, including the lizard soldiers who guarded the city and the lizard guards who patrolled the streets, but these lizard men didn't have the aura of the demon Dao at all. They were completely different from the lizard men they had seen in the demon world. Ding! The bar's doorbell rang. In an instant, the gazes of all the monsters in the bar converged on Wang Ling and the others. Wang Ling spread out his golden light shield to protect everyone. Although Super Chen could feel the pressure, Wang Ling was shouldering most of the spiritual pressure. Super Chen and Hero Guo couldn't help sighing at the realism of this game. It actually had a pressure-sensing mechanism. This game was too strong. Although they couldn't afford to buy a virtual game pod, they still had some understanding of the games in it. They knew about the virtual game pods that were publicly sold on the market, and there were only a few of them. Furthermore, according to the official evaluation results, they were all lacking in realism. They could actually feel spiritual pressure in this game. It was really amazing. You're the NPC, right? Super Chen wasn't afraid, and directly walked up to the lizard bartender and pinched his nose. The lizard bartender frowned. Super Chen, oh my god. Hero Guo, look. This NPC actually has an expression. It's actually angry. This game's algorithm is really amazing. Wang Ling, Fong Xing and Bai Qiao. Then, Super Chen picked up a bottle that another monster had been drinking from, and smashed it down on the lizard bartender's head with a paw sound. The lizard bartender was furious, and his face instantly turned red. Super Chen, oh my god. Everyone, look. This lizard bartender can actually get angry. The NPCs in this game are too realistic. The lizard bartender cursed loudly. Although he couldn't understand what the other party was saying at all, everyone in the universe cursed in the same way. Qi sank into the dantian, saliva sprayed everywhere, and the sound was as loud as firecrackers on New Year's Eve. Seeing Super Chen's cheeky expression, the lizard bartender directly took out a gun and aimed it at him. Ha ha ha. This lizard even took out a gun, but can it really hit me? As he joked, Super Chen grinned and stretched out his hand to directly snatch the lizard bartender's gun back. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and Bai Qiao. Then, Super Chen aimed the gun at the lizard bartender's head. You're an NPC, so be it. If I want to hit you, I'll hit you. Bang! A laser beam shot out from the gun and pierced the lizard bartender's head. The lizard bartender collapsed in a pool of blood. Super Chen was startled again. Holy shit! The blood in this game is actually red. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and Bai Qiao. Chapter 9:18. The bar was in chaos as many of the monsters were scared off. They had never seen such fiendish monsters before. Who on earth was that red giant with demon king horns? He actually dared to cause trouble so openly and even killed the bartender. The monsters were stupefied. Some of them lay on the ground with their hands over their heads, while others simply ran for their lives out of the bar, howling as they ran, and the ear-piercing sound shook everyone's eardrums. This game's sound simulation mechanism is also very realistic. There's even a long-range reaction. Looking at the monsters running away, Super Chen couldn't help sighing. Ouch! At that moment, Super Chen suddenly cried out in pain. He had been hit in the back by a laser beam. But because of the protective spirit light, the laser beam hadn't pierced Super Chen's armor, and the pain was almost negligible. It was like being flicked on the skull. Super Chen turned around and grabbed the lizard man waiter who had been lying on the ground, shooting at him with an extremely excited expression on his face. Ha ha ha. The NPCs here actually know how to fight back. As expected, it's very similar to Vice City. The lizard man waiter had a terrified expression on his face. Hero Gua and Little Peanut moved closer and were full of praise when they saw it. Hero Gua sighed. This game must have cost a lot of money. Look at this little thing, even the terrified expression is very well done. I'm afraid it's watched self-cultivation as an actor. Just as Super Chen aimed his gun at the lizard man waiter, police siren sounded outside the bar, which delighted Super Chen. Don't worry, everyone, we've already triggered the plot. At a time like this, someone will definitely appear to guide us away from the guards. As soon as he said this, a large hole suddenly appeared in the ceiling, and a man in a black cloak fell from it. Look! What did I say? Super Chen laughed loudly. Wang Ling, Fang Xing and White Pigeon, what are you waiting for? Let's go. The cloaked man's face was covered by a clown mask. The moment he landed, he spread his arms and opened up a dazzling purple space tunnel. But this wasn't a spell. Wang Ling noticed the ring on the cloaked man's finger. This space tunnel had been created purely from the power accumulated in the ring. It was an unknown energy that was neither spiritual qi nor primordial qi. But what exactly was this? What was this planet full of monsters? The answers to all these questions would be revealed soon. Before the large group of lizard men guards riding wyverns with warning lights on their heads arrived at the bar, Wang Ling and the others arrived at a mysterious base with the help of a cloaked man who had suddenly appeared. They were underground. He had already used the King's Eye to scan an entire planet, so he would know his position no matter where he was. After so many years, someone has finally come. The man took off his mask and untied his black cloak. He was a resolute middle-aged man with a short beard and a triangular mole at the corner of his eye. After taking off the black cloak, the man was wearing a white tracksuit and black track pants underneath, and a medal on the right side of his chest caught Wang Ling's attention. This was a medal from Huaxiu Nation's Cultivation and Magic Treasure Research Institute. His dumbass brother Wang Ming also had one. It wasn't just Wang Ling, the rest of the people here also noticed this familiar symbol. Many of the commercial magic treasures produced by manufacturers on the market were patented by the Magic Treasure Research Institute, so it wasn't strange for students to be familiar with this symbol. Look, Wang Ling, what did I say? Didn't we trigger the plot? Super Chen covered his mouth as he elbowed Wang Ling next to him. Wang Ling, who are you? Fang Xing stared at the man in front of him. Just like you, I'm from Huashu Nation. My name is Guo Ping. Saying this, the man raised his head. Then, he turned his gaze to Dopey Gua. And this is my nephew. Everyone, Hero Gua's mouth fell open. He never expected his omnipotent uncle to actually plant an Easter egg in this virtual game. Guo Ping, although you're not my nephew, your father is a distant big brother of mine. Hero Gua instantly got into character. Hello, uncle, what on earth is going on? Fang Xing asked. You're now on a planet called Divine Dao Star in the domain of the gods. Guo Ping frowned, as if recalling something from a long time ago. He turned on his wristwatch, and a data wave chart was instantly projected in the air. After pondering for a moment, Guo Ping turned to everyone and said, about 6 years ago, when the gate between worlds descended, we detected a trace of special energy mixed in with the energy fluctuations of the demon realm that we had never seen before. This unusual energy is stronger than spirit qi. Considering that Earth's spirit qi is currently drying up, we started to investigate the source of this unusual energy. Guo Ping then turned his wristwatch, and the image projected in the air changed to a map of the universe. This is our location, Earth. Guo Ping pointed to a blue planet the size of an ink dot on the map. He then looked elsewhere. I've circled this area in the middle with a red circle, which we call the center of the domain. The orange circle beyond that is the Milky Way, which is the legendary domain of the gods. Domain of the gods. The people from number 60 high school raised their eyebrows. They had heard this term in textbooks before. Rumor had it that it was the place where almighties gathered after transcending and attaining Tao. The domain of the gods does exist. Guo Ping was very serious. But Super Chen and the others couldn't help snickering. In their eyes, this was just a game program setting, and they felt that the script was quite plausible. Although they had heard rumors of the domain of the gods in textbooks, their teachers had said that this kind of place didn't exist at all. How strong were the 10 generals? How strong was the head of state? Even such strong people like them hadn't ascended yet. But while they thought this, Super Chen and the others didn't interrupt. They knew that the game plot had already unfolded, and they couldn't interrupt the NPC at this time. They had to listen quietly to find clues to clear the game. Looking at the map, Guo Ping continued, what you're looking at now is the domain of the gods outside the orange circle, which is also where Divine Dao Star is located. In the end, we determined that the source of this special energy is in the domain of the gods, which is 30 million light-years away from Earth. Thus, 6 years ago, I was assigned by the Research Institute to take the small spaceship God Ming 1 to search for clues to this special energy. 30 million light-years. How can we solve the problem of the spaceship's energy source? With our country's latest scientific methods, it only takes an hour to fly 10,000 light-years at full speed. But the problem we can't solve is the continuous consumption of energy. We don't have enough fuel to fly such a long distance, Guo Ping said. Then, later, academician Wang Ming found a solution. Saying this, Guo Ping switched the image projected in the air. The black lines in the image that look like strands of hair are energy lines made up of highly dense spirit power. These energy lines can sustain energy consumption for a distance of 1 million light-years. I don't know how academician Wang Ming developed this thing. I still have a pile of it in my hands. Because the equipment in the lab is a local product, it isn't compatible with the special energy on Divine Dao Star, so the energy in the lab is currently provided by this strand of hair. When it's almost finished, I'll replace it with another strand. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. How was this a black line that looked like a strand of hair? This was AF *** King's strand of hair. Because this strand of hair was his. Chapter 9:19. When Guo Ping said this, Wang Ling suddenly remembered that there had been a time 6 years ago when Wang Ming had come to the villa very frequently, and would always go to the toilet when he had nothing to do. Looking at it now, it was very likely that Wang Ming had gone to the toilet to collect his hair. Wang Ling had the habit of washing his hair every day. In addition to showering every night, he would wash his hair in the sink in the morning. If he washed his hair so diligently, there would always be 1 or 2 strands of hair that would fall out. Hearing Guo Ping suddenly mention this, Wang Ling finally knew why his dumbass brother had hidden his impure motives back then. Actually, a long time ago, Wang Ling had felt that Wang Ming had been a little sneaky. He had thought that Wang Ming was coveting his crispy noodle snacks. But every time Wang Ming found an excuse to go to the toilet in his room, the number of crispy noodle snacks he had didn't decrease. As time went by, Wang Ling stopped suspecting him. Who knew that this dumbass brother of his would actually target his washed hair? Wang Ling couldn't imagine how wretched this guy's expression would be when he bent over and scooped hair out of the drain with a wire hook. The truth was that Wang Ling also didn't know that the extra hair back then had actually been made into a figurine by Wang Ming, which was locked in a safe in the research room. This was Wang Ling's version of the Barbie doll, which Wang Ming had carefully selected and collected back then. If this Barbie doll was used as a power source, it would at least be able to maintain an energy consumption of hundreds of millions of light years in space. Then, did you summon us here? I don't have the ability. This is Star-Lord's trick. His plan is to confine the strongest person on Earth on Divine Tao Star, and then launch the Earth-devouring plan. Saying this, Guo Ping swept his gaze over the crowd. He knew that the legendary strongest person on Earth was among them, and that the rest had been dragged in because they had been implicated. Sure enough, it's because of me again. Wang Ling sighed. While he was pondering this, Wang Ling saw Guo Ping's gaze turn to Bai Qiao. Miss, you're the legendary strongest person on Earth, right? Bai Qiao swept a glance at Wang Ling next to her out of the corner of her eye, thought for a bit, and then nodded. It's me. She didn't directly expose him, not because she was afraid of his strength. Miss Bai Qiao was different from those coquettish B*****s who followed their hearts in the past. In contrast, Bai Qiao was more realistic. What she had thought just now was that Wang Ling was her boss, so there was no harm in taking the blame. So, what on earth is this plan to devour the Earth? Bai Qiao asked with her arms crossed. I'll have to start with the origin of Divine Tao Star. Including the time I spent drifting in space, it took me nearly a year to get to Divine Tao Star, and another year to basically understand the Divine Tao language used on this planet. Guo Ping composed himself and said, I define the special energy used on Divine Tao Star as godly power. This was a special energy source that relied on devouring other energy sources to strengthen itself. Over the years, Divine Tao Star-Lord has relied on his own power to devour many planets that contain life, and devour all the independent energy sources on their planets to strengthen himself. He wants to raise Divine Tao Star to the top of the universe, and this time, Star-Lord's latest target is Earth. Ball battle. Super Chin suddenly thought of a mobile game. You can think of it that way, said Guo Ping, who also knew of this game. Back then, when he had drifted in space and arrived on Divine Tao Star, he had fallen into a dead end because of the language barrier. Although a lot of people thought he was already dead, but while Guo Ping hadn't been on Earth all these years, he had kept abreast of the latest news and technological information on Earth through the lab's terminal data. A person living alone on an alien planet had to be careful in every aspect. A brand new civilization, a brand new language, and a brand new set of rules of life. For Guo Ping, who was an outsider from Earth, this was simply like being imprisoned. If a person who had been in prison for a long time didn't understand the situation in the outside world in time, and couldn't integrate into life after returning, they would go crazy. Mississippi, at that moment, Guo Ping turned to look at Bai Qiao. Currently, the only way to save Earth is to negotiate with Star-Lord. We don't have much time left. What do you mean? Divine Tao Star is so far away from Earth, and it's so huge. Even if it wants to devour Earth, it probably won't be that easy, asked Fang Xing. No. Divine Tao Star's clone is now in Earth's core. What? An effect similar to magnets attracting each other. Guo Ping said, Divine Tao Star's clone will resonate remotely with the godly power of the main star. Based on current calculations, as long as half of the main star's godly power is drawn out, Divine Tao Star's clone will be able to swallow Earth inch by inch from the inside. Then how do you want to negotiate? Cede land and pay reparations. Or is there any other way? Bai Qiao said, Oh, that's right, my surname is Bai, I'm Bai Qiao. There is. Guo Ping said, I currently have two solutions. First, calculate the conversion formula between godly power and spirit power, and then use our special equipment to convert spirit power into spirit qi. In this way, we can replenish Earth's spirit qi, and also solve the problem of a lack of spirit qi in the future. But there are 3 difficulties with this plan. I'm guessing that I've only calculated 1/10 of the formula. And the equipment is still on Earth. Second, negotiate with Star-Lord, cede land and pay reparations, and try to peacefully coexist between our 2 stars. But I can't make the decision on ceding land and paying reparations. And this Star-Lord won't be willing to negotiate with an ant like me. But if Miss Bai steps in, there might be a chance of survival. Only these 2 methods. Only these 2. Guo Ping sighed. I've witnessed Star-Lord's strength with my own eyes. He's not in the same dimension as people on Earth or in the domain of the gods. We're just ants to Star-Lord. Not necessarily, there might be a third way. At that moment, Fang Xing and Bai Qiao both raised their heads and said in unison. A third way. What way? Guo Ping was blank for a moment. Blow him up. At that moment, a voice rang out in Guo Ping's mind. He saw that teenager with dead fish eyes, who had been standing at the back of the crowd the whole time, raise his head to look at him. Blow up Star-Lord, is this young man talking to me? Chapter 920. Blow up Star-Lord. These incomparably domineering words lingered in Guo Ping's mind. This was indeed a special plan that Guo Ping couldn't imagine. But how could it be easy to beat Star-Lord? Let alone blow him up, was this really possible? Guo Ping couldn't imagine it. Although he hadn't been on Divine Tao Star for long, he had personally witnessed Star-Lord's brutality. This was a tyrant comparable to the god of destruction. As long as this tyrant set his sights on you, it was all over. Star-Lord has done a lot of inhumane things to expand Divine Tao Star all these years. Every time he thought of this, Guo Ping couldn't help trembling. Most of the information was obtained from the alien news. Translating the alien language into the human language was an extremely long translation process. Guo Ping had felt the fear that came from the depths of his soul countless times during the translation. Every time he completed the expansion of the planet, this Star-Lord of Divine Tao Star would announce it to the world with a proud and arrogant expression on his face. He was swearing an oath to everyone. He was the god of the universe. An omnipotent expert. Guo Ping's body trembled. Wang Ling could clearly sense that Guo Ping's eyes had lost all color in that instant. Feudal resistance. When he said these words, there didn't seem to be any trace of bravery in them, and he knelt on the ground as if all his anger had been vented. Star-Lord of Divine Tao Star has never failed in capturing planets. Even those who struggled to escape were swallowed up one by one. Guo Ping said gloomily, I once saw the destruction of an alien civilization with my own eyes. It was a population of more than 20 billion. In order to escape Divine Tao Star's pursuit, 20 billion people worked together to stop the planet from spinning. They also installed hundreds of thousands of thrusters on the side of the planet so that it could escape Divine Tao Star's pursuit. Speaking up to this point, Guo Ping smiled bitterly. So, even if you can stop Divine Tao Star's clone from expanding in the Earth's core, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape forever. If Star-Lord's plan fails, he'll directly fly Divine Tao Star over and swallow up the entire solar system. Even if Earth has the Wandering Earth plan. With Lu Zixin's imagination, Wu Jing won't be able to escape. Everyone, after being trapped on Divine Tao Star for so many years, Guo Ping's last bit of patience was about to run out. When he saw Wang Ling and the others in the tavern, who also spoke Mandarin, he felt like he was grasping at straws of life. Previously, he had intercepted a secret report which indicated that Star-Lord would capture the strongest person on Earth and imprison him here. Guo Ping had already made preparations early on.